Hey everyone, tonight we'll delve into the forgotten saga of Queen Alara, who dared to utter the forbidden name of Zeus in the heart of a crumbling Mycenaean palace, shattering an oath that bound mortals to silence for generations. The distant crash of waves against jagged cliffs mingles with the low toll of temple bells, their bronze echoes vibrating through the stone like the breath of ancient oaths, while the sharp ring of iron on iron from distant forges underscores the fragility of human ambition. You probably won't want to believe what you are about to hear, a tale where a queen's whispered defiance ripples across the cosmos, challenging the very stars that the gods claim to command. So before the tension gets too high, take a moment to like the episode and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. It's fascinating to see where this myth resonates under different skies. Now, close your eyes. Imagine the ancient mountains shrouded in eternal mist, and let's unravel this epic tale together. You stand at the threshold of the grand palace of Mycenae, its cyclopean walls rising like the bones of giants long turned to dust. The air thick with the scent of olive oil lamps flickering against the chill of dawn. The year is lost to the haze of legend, but whispers among the courtiers speak of a time when the Mycenaean kings ruled from fortresses that defied earthquakes and invaders alike. Their linear B-tablets etching tales of trade with distant Crete and offerings to Poseidon that ensured safe voyages across the wind-dark sea. This was the era of heroes, when bronze spears gleamed under the sun and the gods walked among men, their footsteps leaving craters in the earth. Yet here, in the shadowed heart of the palace, you sense something amiss, a hush that falls heavier than the fog rolling in from the Argive plain. As you step inside, your sandals scrape against polished marble floors veined with quartz, each footfall echoing like a heartbeat in the vast Megaron hall. Tapestries of crimson wool woven with scenes of the Titanomachy, where gods hurled mountains at one another, hang limp in the still air, their threads frayed from years of neglect. Servants move like ghosts, their linen chitons whispering as they carry him free of spiced wine. But their eyes dart nervously toward the throne at the far end. There she sits, Queen Alara, her form regal yet bowed under an invisible weight. Her raven hair unbound and cascading like a river of night over a chiton embroidered with golden threads depicting the labyrinth of Minos. Her face, pale as moonlit alabaster, holds the sharp beauty of a Kuro statue. But her eyes, deep pools of storm gray, betray a sorrow that clings like damp cedar smoke from a dying hearth fire. You approach closer, drawn by an unseen thread of fate. The air growing cooler as if the winds from Mount Olympus themselves seep through the cracks in the stone. Elara's fingers trace the arm of her throne, a massive seat carved from olive wood, inlaid with ivory plaques depicting oaths sworn on the river Styx. Those unbreakable pacts that even Zeus honors. In the myths of Greek antiquity, such oaths were the glue of the cosmos binding deities and mortals alike. Break one, and the Furies would descend with whips of serpent hair, their cries piercing the soul like temple bells tolling doom. But Alara's touch lingers on a peculiar artifact embedded in the throne's bacca. Small, obsidian amulet, no larger than a man's palm, its surface etched with spirals that seem to shift when you blink, as if alive with some anomalous function. Legend has it, this relic, forged in the fires of Hephaestus' volcanic forge, possesses a bizarre quirk. It warms only to the touch of those harboring unspoken defiance, humming faintly like the distant buzz of cicadas before a storm, a secret signal that the gods' vigilance might one day falter. She lifts her gaze to meet yours, and in that moment, the hall fades, the clink of goblets, the murmur of scribes, scratching on clatha, world narrowing to the raw ache in her voice. Stranger, she says, her words measured like the drip of water in a sacred cave, you have come at the hour when shadows lengthen, and truths hide no longer. I am Alara, widow of King Agamemnon's distant kin. Ruler of these halls since the day the oracle at Delphi foretold my lioness entanglement with the divine. Her confession spills forth slowly, a pilgrim's tale shared by firelight. You learn of her hidden sorrow, the loss of her only child, a boy named Theron, taken by a fever that the priests blamed on Poseidon's wrath for a forgotten libation. But Alara knows better. In the dead of night as she knelt by his bedside, she heard the boy's delirious whispers of a broken oath her own. Sworn in youth to never question the gods' capricious decrees, a vow sealed with a drop of her blood on that very obsidian amulet. The queen rises, her movements fluid yet weighted, like a priestess enacting a rite long suppressed. You follow her to an alcove where braziers burn with myrrh incense, smoke curling in tendrils that form fleeting shape-swinged figures, thunderbolts, a labyrinthine path leading upward. This palace, she continues, her voice gaining an edge of steel, stands as a testament to our ancestors' bargains with the deities. They built these walls with blocks too massive for mortal hands, guided by the Cyclopus, or so the songs claim. What have we gained? Glory that crumbles like dry clay under the boot of fate. She pauses, her hand pressing against the amulet, which now emits a soft, eerie hum, vibrating through your own chest like the pulse of the earth itself. This quirky detail of the relic, passed down through priestly lore, reveals its true oddity. It not only warms to defiance, but echoes the bearer's deepest taboo in a language of subtle vibrations, translating sorrow into a call that only the bold can hear. A sound like iron ringing under held breath, urging action where silence once reigned. As the incense thickens, painting the air with visions of star omens, constellations wheeling unnaturally across a painted ceiling, Lara's eyes harden with resolve. I've kept their laws, offered the hecatombs, whispered hymns to Athena for wisdom, and to Demeter for bountiful fields. But when Theron faded, calling out against the injustice of gods who toy with lives like pieces on a gaming board, something within me fractured. The oath I swore as a girl, binding me to eternal obedience. Chafes like chains forged in the underworld. You feel the shift in her tone, the calm, methodical cadence building toward suspense, as if the very walls lean in to listen. She speaks of ancient crafts, the weaving of her chiton on looms strung with linen from Egyptian traders, dyed with murex purple that costs a dozen slaves' labor. The forging of bronze mirrors that reflect not just faces but fleeting glimpses of divine watchers. In this world of Greek mythology, where heroes like Heracles wrestled fate itself, Ilara's grief ignites a spark of defiance, a refusal to accept the costs of miracles, the traded memories, the scars of silence that the deities demand. The hum of the amulet grows insistent, syncing with the distant crash of waves, a leitmotif of the sea's restless power, mirroring the turmoil in her heart. You stand there, immersed in the sensory creep of the palace, the cold stone sweating faint moisture under your palms. The salt-tinged breeze carrying hints of impending rain, the low chant of a hidden ritual echoing from below. Ilara turns fully to you now, her presence commanding a threshold guardian in her own right. This sorrow is no mere mortal woe. It is the seed of a challenge that could unravel the threads woven by the Moirai themselves. I will not fade into obscurity while the gods feast on our offerings and laugh at our pleas. Her words hang like a sacred bargain, laced with the psychological intrigue of one who has glimpsed the fragility behind divine grandeur. But as the first rays of sun pierce the hall, gilding the throne in gold, a shadow flickers across the amulet and bidden, unnatural. Was it a trick of the light, or the first whisper of retribution from Olympus? The question that lingers, pulling you deeper into the tale, is whether Ilara's hidden sorrow will consume her, or forge a path to confront the deities who forged her chains. The shadow across the amulet fades as quickly as it appeared, leaving you and Ilara in a moment of suspended breath. The palace hall now, it's bathed in the warming light of morning that filters through high slits in the walls like divine eyes peering down. But the hum persists, a subtle vibration that urges her forward, and without another word she gestures for you to follow. Her steps leading you out of the Megaron and down a winding corridor lined with frescoes of heroes battling sea monsters, their painted forms frozen in eternal struggle. The air shifts as you descend stone stairs slick with condensation, the scent of earth and smoldering herbs growing stronger, pulling you toward the underbelly of Mycenae, where the sacred temple lies hidden from the sun's gaze. This is no grand acropolis like those atop Athens. It's a chthonic sanctum carved into the living rock, where the Mycenaeans once consulted oracles before setting sail for Troy, drawing on the same prophetic traditions that guided the Greek city-states through wars and plagues, their Pythia, inhaling vapors from sacred fissures to channel Apollo's voice. You emerge into the temple chamber, a cavernous space where the ceiling arches like the ribs of some primordial beast, supported by columns of unhewn stone that drip with moisture from unseen springs. Flickering flames dance in bronze braziers set into alcoves, casting erratic shadows that play across walls inscribed with linear B-script fragments of hymns to forgotten deities, evoking protection from the unyielding laws of the cosmos. The air is heavy, laced with the acrid bite of burning laurel leaves, their smoke curling upward in lazy spirals that seem to whisper secrets to the low-hanging stalactites. Ilara moves to the center, where a tripod cauldron simmers over a bed of glowing coals, its surface etched with serpentine patterns that evoke the python slain by Apollo at Delphi, a local legend among these Argive folk that ties their fates to the god of prophecy and light. You kneel beside her on the cold flagstones, feeling the earth's pulse through your knees, as if the mountain itself breathes in rhythm with the flames. From the gloom steps the oracle, a figure shrouded in veils of saffron silk that rustle like autumn leaves in a gale. She is the seer archetype of veiled wisdom in this tapestry of Greek mythology, her eyes milky from years of gazing into the void, her hands gnarled like olive roots clutching a staff topped with a crystal that catches the firelight and scatters it like fallen stars. Queen Ilara, she intones, her voice a rasp honed by chanting prophecies in the dead of night. The vapors rise, and with them, the words of the unseen. You seek the path beyond sorrow, but the gods' laws are threads spun from the wool of fate. Pull one, and the loom unravels. Ilara nods, her face illuminated in the flame's glow, and you watch as the seer dips a bronze ladle into the cauldron, pouring the steaming liquid, a brew of herbs and spring water onto the coals. The flames leap higher, releasing a plume of vapor that fills the chamber, carrying the scent of wild thyme and something sharper, like ozone before a thunderclap. As the mist envelops you, your vision blurs, the world softening into a dreamscape where sounds amplify, the crackle of fire, the drip of water from the ceiling, the distant rumble of chariots on the plain above. The oracle leans forward, her breath mingling with the smoke, and begins her revelation in a cadence that builds like a gathering storm. In the age when heroes walked the earth, before the walls of Troy fell to cunning and bronze, a queen arose from the shadows of Mycenae. She, who bears the mark of the obsidian oath, shall confront the unyielding laws of Olympus. Hear the prophecy. When the blood moon weeps over the labyrinth's heart, a forgotten one will call forth the name unspoken, and the thunderer's throne shall quake. Deities will bargain in starlit eclipse, but the price of defiance is a river crossed in silence, a relic's curse unbound. Her words hang in the air, each syllable weighted with the psychological intrigue of ancient mysteries, hinting at the costs mortals pay when they dare weave themselves into the gods' grand design. You feel a chill despite the heat, the vapor coiling around your limbs like invisible chains as the seer continues, her voice dropping to a confessional whisper that draws you into the intimacy of oral tradition. I have seen it in the flames, Ilaria, bold confrontation, a thread that could fray the tapestry of divine order. But remember, in the tales of Greek heroes like Odysseus, who outwitted Poseidon at every turn, even the clever paid dearly for their audacity. She pauses, her milky eyes seeming to pierce through the mist directly to you. And in that moment, a first-person echo surfaces from the depths of the narration, as if the seer speaks through me, as one who has bridged worlds in trance. I confess the terror of such visions, they linger like damp cedar in the soul, urging us toward thresholds we dare not cross alone. The quirky detail emerges then, tied to Apollo himself, the patron of this oracle, his lyre, said in obscure temple lore to possess a bizarre temperament, strumming not harmonious notes but echoes of the bearer's unspoken fears when played under a taboo moon. A rule that forbids its touch by those harboring doubt, lest it unravel the player's sanity with dissonant whispers. Ilara absorbs the words, her hands clenching the hem of her chiton, the fabric's golden threads glinting like veins of ore in the firelight. The prophecy unfolds further in the seer's rhythmic chant, painting scenes of ritual and omen, a sacred bargain struck under celestial signs, where eclipses blot the sun and stars shift like grief in the wind, revealing cursed relics hidden in labyrinths of bronze and obsidian. You envision the river crossings ahead, thresholds guarded by oath-keepers whose iron trials demand blood price for passage. The sonic textures of sacred spaces, temple bells tolling, incense hissing, the low hum of fate weavers at their looms. The gods, the oracle warns, are not merciful arbiters. Their boons come laced with scars, traded memories for glimpses of power. Yet in this defiance, Alara, you embody the heroes of old, those who bartered with deities and emerged changed. Their legends etched in stone as proverbs. Oaths live in the cut, but silence cuts deepest. The flames settle, the vapor thinning to reveal the temple's inscriptions glowing faintly. Fragments of hymnal lines that recur like leitmotifs. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. Alara rises. Her resolve hardening in the aftermath, the prophecy's weight settling on her shoulders like a mantle of stars. You stand with her, the air clearing but the tension coiling tighter. The seer's staff tapping once against the stona sound like iron on iron, echoing the forges of divine retribution. The revelation has ignited the spark from your palace encounter, transforming hidden sorrow into a foretold blaze. But the path forward bristles with psychological tension, the unyielding laws of the gods looming like storm clouds over the Argive plain. As the oracle retreats into the shadows, her veils trailing whispers, the chamber falls silent save for the dying crackle of flames. But the question that remains, hanging like mist in the air, is what forbidden name Alara will utter first to set this prophecy in motion, and whether the gods are already listening from their celestial heights. The temple's silence lingers as you and Alara ascend the slick stairs back to the palace corridors. The oracle's prophecy echoing in your mind like the fading rasp of her voice amid the dying flames. The air above ground feels lighter, charged with the promise of nightfall, as servants bustle with preparations for the evening rites lighting. Lamps with flint strikes that spark like tiny stars arranging garlands of myrtle and laurel on altars hewn from local limestone. Mycenae in the heart of the Peloponnese was once a nexus of Bronze Age power, its rulers dispatching fleets to distant shores as chronicled in the Linear B tablets unearthed from these very ruins. Records of offerings to the deities that mirrored the grand sacrifices of Homeric epics where kings poured libations to appease the immortals before battle. Alara leads you to a secluded balcony overlooking the Lion Gate, its massive lintel, carved with prowling beasts that seem to watch your every move, their stone eyes glinting in the twilight as the sun dips toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple. Night falls swiftly, the stars emerging one by one, like hesitant witnesses to the unfolding drama. And soon the moon rises swollen and crimson, a blood moon that bathes the landscape in an eerie, rose-colored glow. An omen straight from the annals of ancient mysteries where such celestial signs heralded upheavals in the divine order. You stand with Alara at the balcony's edge, the cool marble railing smooth under your palms while below, the citadel's fires flicker like scattered embers, their smoke carrying the faint, salty temps of the nearby sea. She is changed into a ritual chiton of white linen, unadorned, save for a belt of intertwined serpents in gold, symbolizing the eternal cycle of oaths and their inevitable coils. In her hand, she clutches the obsidian amulet from the throne, its spirals now pulsing faintly in the moonlight, as if attuned to the prophecy's call. "The time has come," she murmurs, her voice steady yet laced with the psychological tension of one stepping onto a path from which there is no return. "To seal what the seer foretold. Under this blood moon, I will swear the taboo vow that binds my fate to challenge Olympus itself." You watch as she places the amulet on a small tripod altar, beside a basin of spring water drawn from a sacred grotto, its surface rippling with reflections of the crimson sky. The relic, cursed in the lore of Greek mythology as a fragment of Pandora's own box before it was sealed, holds a bizarre detail known only to high priestesses. When blood touches its surface under a lunar eclipse or blood moon, it doesn't merely absorb the offering but replays the swearer as deepest fear in a whisper only they can hear. A quirky auditory anomaly that functions as both guardian and tormentor, enforcing the vow's weight with personalized echoes of doubt. Alara pricks her finger with a bronze needle, sharp and cold, drawing a single drop of blood that wells like a ruby in the dim light. It falls onto the obsidian, and immediately the stone warms, humming with that familiar vibration that now resonates through the air, syncing with the distant howl of wind through the Lion Gate's portala, sound like iron, ringing under breath, underscoring the gravity of the moment. As the blood spreads in intricate patterns across the relic's face, Alara begins the oath, her words measured in the calm, methodical cadence of an epic storyteller, drawing you into the second-person immersion of her resolve. You kneel beside her, the balcony's stone floor, unyielding against your knees feeling. The night's chill seep through your own chitin as she invokes the archetypes of this mythic world. The trickster, who might aid or betray. The oracle whose visions now propel her, the threshold guardians awaiting beyond the river of souls. By the unyielding laws of the deities, she intones. Her voice rising like a hymn fragment etched in temple stone. I, Alara of Mycenae, renounce the silence imposed upon mortals. I swear upon this cursed relic to utter the forbidden name. To question the boons that demand such heavy costs, scars of traded memories, the blood price of sacred bargains. Let the stars bear witness, let the eclipse to come seal this pact, and if I falter, may the labyrinth claim my steps eternal. The amulet responds, its hum deepening into a low chant. Weaving in motifs of fate, the river crossing she must yet face. Star omens aligning like the prophecy's threads, the cursed relic now alive with her defiance. The blood moon climbs higher, casting long shadows that dance across the balcony like spectral oath-keepers. Their forms twisting in the breeze that carries scents of cedar incense from hidden shrines below. Alara's face, illuminated in crimson, reveals the epic scope of her challenge, the psychological intrigue of a queen who, like the heroes of old, dares to weave her thread into the loom of the gods. You sense the costs already, a faint scar blooming on her palm where the needle pricked, not just flesh, but a mark on her. Soul, a traded memory of Theranos' laughter flickering at the edge of her mind before vanishing into the relic-esque depths. In this tradition of Greek mythology, where deities like Hera enforced taboos with jealous fury, such vows were no light matter. They echoed the local legends of Spartan queens who bargained with Artemis for strength in battle. Their oaths carved into olive trees that withered if broken, a historical thread, tying mortal ambition to divine caprice. A soft confessional interlude breaks through as Alara pauses, her eyes meeting yours in the moonlight, the intimacy of oral tradition surfacing like a pilgrim's aside. In the quiet hours before this night, I confess the fear that gripped me, the whisper of the amulet replaying my doubts, a sound like damp stone sweating in the dark. Yet for Theron, for all the forgotten ones crushed under the weight of godly whims, I press on. She resumes, her oath concluding with a proverb that seeds itself in the night air. Oaths live in the cut, and from this cut freedom bleeds. The relic absorbs the vow fully now, its surface cooling as the hum fades, leaving only the blood moon's glow and the sonic textures of the sacred space, the rustle of night winds. The distant toll of a temple bell marking the hour, the subtle creak of the balcony's ancient beams, as if the palace itself shifts under the burden. With the taboo sealed, Alara stands, the amulet now hanging from a cord around her neck, its weight a constant reminder of the binding. The stars above seem to wheel closer, omens of the trials ahead, labyrinths of echoed lies, eclipses that will reveal hidden truths, the underworld guide who might ferry her across forbidden rivers. You rise with her, the night's tension coiling tighter, the psychological tension of her defiance mirroring the epic cadence of heroes who challenge deities and paid in silence or scars. The vow has transformed the prophecy from words to action, her fate now irrevocably tied to the challenge of Olympus, where sacred bargains await with their consequential prices. But as the blood moon reaches its zenith, a faint rumble echoes from the mountains, a whisper of thunder, or perhaps the first stir of divine awareness. The question that remains, drawing you toward the river's edge, is how swiftly the gods will exact their toll for this forbidden oath, and whether Alara's relic will shield her or betray her in the crossing to come. The rumble from the mountains fades into the night's hush, leaving you and Alara on the balcony. The blood moon's crimson light now receding as stars reclaim the sky, their patterns a silent judgment on the oath just sealed. She touches the obsidian amulet at her throat, its warmth a lingering assurance against the chill wind that rises from the valley below, carrying the faint, briny whisper of distant waters. The vow calls us forth, she says, her voice threading suspense into the epic cadence of your shared journey to the river Acheron, shadowed kin to the Styx. Where forgotten souls drift and thresholds demand their due, we must cross before dawn, or the gods' first toll will claim us here. You nod. the psychological intrigue of her words pulling you like an unseen current, and together you descend from the palace, slipping past slumbering guards whose torches sputter in iron sconces, their flames casting elongated shadows that mimic the coiling serpents of her belt. The path winds downward through olive groves, silvered by moonlight, the gnarled trees groaning softly in the breeze, their leaves rustling like pages of ancient scrolls, recounting the labors of heroes. In the lore of Greek mythology, the Acheron River of Wome mirrored the underworld's boundaries and mortal realms, much like the actual waterway in Epirus that ancient pilgrims navigated to consult the dead at Dodana's oracle, a historical site where oak leaves whispered. Prophecies from Zeus himself blending the epic with the earthly in rites that tested the living's resolve. Your sandals crunch over gravel paths etched by centuries of processions, the air growing damper, heavier with the scent of mud and decaying reeds as the river's murmur grows audible low. Relentless Cicerus that speaks of secrets submerged. Elara leads with purposeful strides, her chiton trailing like a veil. The amulet's faint hum syncing with the night's sonic textures, the chirp of crickets fading into silence, the occasional hoot of an owl omen from the branches above, star omens wheeling overhead as if the constellations themselves track your progress. At last you reach the riverbank, a forsaken stretch where the Acheron swells black, and sluggish under the stars, its surface unbroken save for the occasional ripple from unseen depths like breaths held too long. Mist clings to the water's edge, coiling around basalt boulders worn smooth by eons, and the air tastes of iron and salt, evoking the sweat of stone in sacred spaces long abandoned. No bridge spans this shadowed flow. Instead, a flat-bottomed skiff bobs against a weathered dock of cedar planks, its oars crossed like bones. But the vessel is not unguarded. From the fog emerges the threshold guardian, hulking figure cloaked in tattered hides, his form neither fully man nor shade, eyes glowing with the pallid light of will-o'-the-wisps. He is Charon-like in this mortal echo of the underworld, archetype of the ferryman who enforces passages. Price. His presence a barrier woven from the unyielding laws of deities who decree that no solar, defiant queen crosses without cost. You halt at the water's edge. The guardian's staff a gnarled branch topped with a skull of polished bone, thudding against the dock to signal his demand. Who seeks the far shore? He growls, his voice a gravelly rumble like stones shifting in the riverbed. Carrying the weight of countless oaths ferried into oblivion, Elara steps forward, her posture unyielding, the amulet casting a subtle glow that reflects in the water like a fallen star. I am Elara of Mycenae, bound by vow to challenge the god's throne. This stranger witnesses my path. Pay the toll. The guardian's lips curl in a mirthless grin, revealing teeth filed 2 points in some ancient taboo, right? And he leans on his staff, the wood creaking under his grip. In the myths of ancient mysteries, such guardians embodied the costs of miracles, not coin, but essence memories traded for glimpses beyond the veil, scars etched in the soul for boons that reshaped fate. He circles you slowly, his hides whispering against the mist, the air thickening with the scent of damp cedar from the skiff's hull, a material sacred to underworld journeys in Greek tradition, its resin said to ward off the river's grasping tendrils. The toll is memory, he declares, his eyes locking onto Alares, one cherished, surrendered to the flow. Speak it, or turn back to Olympus' unchallenged gaze. The psychological tension mounts as Elara hesitates, her hand instinctively touching the amulet, which now emits a soft, anomalous vibration, a quirky detail of this cursed relic, drawn from Hephaestus' forge, under duress by a guardian's demand. It doesn't just hum, but amplifies the texture of the memory offered, turning it into a tangible echo that the river can taste, a bizarre function where the stone spirals etch the recollection's outline, enforcing the taboo of partial forgetting with a lingering sensory ghost like the sound of laughter trapped in rain. Elara's voice emerges calm yet edged with suspense, drawing you into the second-person depth of the moment. You stand beside her, the river's chill lapping at your ankles through the mist, feeling the weight of her choice as she begins. I offer the memory of Theron's first steps in the palace gardens under spring's bloom, his laughter mingling with the bees' hum. The words hang, and as she speaks the amulet warms, its spirals glowing faintly, replaying the scene in whispers only she hears, the soft patter of tiny feet on marble. The earthy scent of hyacinths, the warmth of sunlight on her skin, a traded essence now pulsing into the relic. The guardian nods, extending his staff to touch the amulet. A spark jumps, and the memory dissolves into the air like incense smoke, carried to the water where it ripples outward, distorting the star's reflections. You sense the cost immediately. Lara's eyes dim slightly. A scar of absence blooming in her gaze, the psychological price of defiance etched deeper. With the toll paid, the guardian gestures to the skiff. Its cedar planks groaning as you board, the oars dipping into the inky flow, with a sound like whispered oaths breaking. He pulls them across the river's current, resisting at first, then yielding with a reluctant sigh, motifs of fate braiding through the crossing. The star omens above aligning into the blood moon's echo. The sacred bargain now one step closer to Olympus. Alara sits silent, her hands folded, the amulet cooling against her chest, while you feel the mist bead on your skin like sweat from cold stone. The sonic textures enveloping the lap of water, the creak of wood, the guardian's labored breath syncing with the night's breath. A confessional interlude surfaces softly from her lips, intimate as a pilgrim's prayer. In offering that fragment of joy, I confess the ache. Like a thread snipped from the Moire's loom, yet it steels me for the trials ahead. Where deities demand silence and heroes pay in echoes. The far shore looms. A bank of twisted willows whose branches trail in the water like fingers grasping for the lost. And as the skiff grounds with a wet thud, the guardian's eyes flicker with something akin to respect or warning. The crossing complete, Alara steps onto the mud. I'll solve. Her resolve unbroken. The river behind now a threshold sealed with memory's blood price. You follow? The ground firmer here, leading toward shadowed woods that hint at labyrinths to come, the epic scope of her challenge unfolding in the night's embrace. But as the mist parts to reveal a faint path winding upward, the guardian's parting words echo over the water, a low chant like a proverb from stone-cut epigraphs, rivers forget but gods remember. The question that remains, propelling you into the unknown, is what other memories the path ahead will demand. And if the trickster's shadow already lurks in the trees to twist this hard-won passage, the guardian's chant fades behind you as the river's murmur recedes, swallowed by the denser hush of the woods that envelop the far shore. Their canopy, a tangled weave of oak and pine branches that filter the starlight into silvery shards on the forest floor. You and Alara press onward along the faint path, the earth soft and yielding underfoot, scented with the loamy decay of fallen leaves and the sharper temps of resin from sap-leading trunks, evoking the sacred groves where ancient rites unfolded. In the traditions of Greek mythology, such wooded thresholds often concealed the domains of lesser deities, much like the historical sanctuary of Hermes at Pheneus in Arcadia, where locals etched vows on boundary stones to honor the messenger. God's role in guiding travelers through perils, a legend that blended divine cunning with the mortal need for safe passage across contested lands. The air cools further, carrying a playful rustle through the underbrush, not the wind, but something lighter, more deliberate, as if the trees themselves conspire in whispers. Alara pauses at a fork in the path, her hand resting on the amulet, which pulses faintly in response to the night's subtle shifts, its cursed relic now a compass attuned to the prophecy's pull. The stars above wheel in their eternal dance omens, tracing arcs that hint at eclipses yet to come. While the psychological tension of the crossing lingers like a traded memory's echo, sharpening her senses to every snap of twig or flutter of leaf. The woods hold more than shadows, she says, her voice a calm thread in the epic weave. The vow demands we heed the signs, lest the labyrinth claim us before Olympus. You nod, scanning the gloom when a figure materializes from the mist-shrouded bole of an ancient olive tree's lender. Cloaked in a traveler's himation of gray wool that blends with the bark, his sandals winged in subtle bronze, glinting like dewdrops. He is the trickster archetype of deception in this pantheon of deities, appearing not in godly splendor, but in the guise of a wandering merchant, his caduceus staff disguised as a shepherd's crook, entwined vines hiding the serpent's subtle coil. Greetings, wayfarers, he calls, his tone lilting with feigned innocence, eyes twinkling like stars caught in mischief. Lost in these enchanted woods after a river's toll? I am Cadmus the traitor, bearer of tales from distant Thebes, but you sense the divine undercurrent. The air shimmering faintly around him with the scent of ambrosia, masked as spiced wine from his satchel, a sacred bargain brewing in his sly grin. Ilara tenses, recognizing the archetype from the seer's warnings, the sly god Hermes, patron of thieves, and heralds, whose interventions in heroes' quests often laced aid with peril, twisting paths toward unforeseen costs. He steps closer, the ground seeming to soften under his tread, and offers a bow that reveals the quirky detail of his helm, hidden beneath the hood. A Pegasus hat with anomalous feathers that do and merely adorn but quiver in response to lies spoken nearby. Bizarre rule from his forge-born origins where Hephaestus enchanted it to enforce truth's edge and deceptions, causing the plumes to shed iridescent barbs if the wearer were a bearer. Airs of falsehood under starlight, pricking the skin with reminders of oaths broken. You stand with Ilara, the forest's sonic textures amplifying the moment the drip of dew from leaves the distant. Hoot of an owl echoing the guardian's farewell, the soft hum of the amulet syncing with Hermes' staff as he taps it against a root. The god's laws tighten like vines, he says, his voice methodical yet laced with suspense, drawing you into the second-person immersion of his offer. But cunning opens doors, bronze locks cannot. I know of your vow, queen, the forbidden name, the challenge to the thunderer's throne. Cross my palm with a trinket, and I'll share advice to navigate the perils ahead, the labyrinth of lies, the oath-keeper's chains. Ilara eyes him warily, the psychological intrigue of his presence coiling tighter, a reminder of ancient mysteries where deities like Hermes bartered with mortals, their boons carrying blood price in the form of altered fates or cursed relics that bound the recipient to silence. She touches the amulet, its warmth a counter to his chill charm, and counters, "What price for your words, traitor?" The river took memory. What will you claim? Hermes or Cadmus chuckles, a sound like wind chimes in a gale, and from his satchel produces a small vial of golden liquid, shimmering with star-omen flecks. No blood this time, but a promise. Drink this nectar of the crossroads, and my cunning will guide you. It reveals illusions in the maze to come, threads the fate weavers might snip. Yet heed the rule once sipped. It binds you to my whim for one trial. A deceptive bargain where I twist your path toward peril if the gods call me back. The vial and artifact of his making holds the bizarre quirk. Its contents not only illuminate deceptions, but imprint a temporary taboo on the drinker, causing their shadow to lag behind in moonlight whispering Hermes. Own jests unbidden a function that escalates choices with consequential prices, turning aid into a labyrinth of self-doubt. In Greek mythology, such gifts echoed the historical tales of Argonauts receiving Hermes' sandals for swift flight. Local legends from Boeotia, where his shrines warned of the messenger's double-edged boons. Costs that scarred heroes with traded loyalties. Ilara weighs the offer, the forest closing in with sensory creep, the damp cedar scent intensifying, cold, stone-like bark sweating moisture under your touch, iron-tanged air from hidden springs bubbling nearby. You feel the epic scope of her decision, the calm cadence building as she accepts the vial, uncorking it with a pop that releases a fragrance of honey and thunder. "For the challenge I accept," she declares, tipping the nectar to her lips. It tastes of wild herbs and forgotten proverbs, warming her from within as visions flicker. Labyrinth walls of echoing bronze eclipses blotting sacred bargains, rivers crossed anew with underworld guides. Hermes nods, his feathers quivering innocently, and imparts his advice in rhythmic whispers. Seek the heart of the maze not by sight, but by the relic's hum. When the fate weavers spin, offer a lie wrapped in truth to unravel their threads. But beware the oath-keeper ahead. His iron trials ring with the costs of defiance. And my bargain ensures your path twists toward the peril of exposure. A confessional interlude slips from Ilara's lips as the nectar takes hold, her voice intimate amid the trees. In tasting this, I confess the thrill of alliance with the divine trickster, yet the shadow's whisper already tugs. Reminder that heroes pay dearly for such cunning. The god fades back into the olive shadow, his laughter lingering like salt incense, leaving you and Ilara to resume the path, now veined with illusory glimmers from the vial's magic. The woods part slightly, revealing glimpses of a twisting labyrinth ahead, motifs braiding tighter, the cursed relic pulsing in harmony with the nectar's echo star omens. guiding yet misleading, the deceptive bargain sealing her fate to Olympus with escalated trials. As the path steepens, Elar's shadow lags for the first time, murmuring a jest about godly whims, the psychological tension mounting with each step into the unknown. But the question that remains echoing through the trees like Hermes' fading chuckle is whether this cunning advice will light the way through the labyrinth or lead her straight into the trickster's peril, where the gods' unyielding laws await with sharpened barbs. The path from the woods constricts as you and Alara advance the ground, hardening into flagstones etched with faint spirals that mimic the amulet's own patterns, leading inexorably into the maw of a colossal structure rising from the mist-shrouded hillside like a forgotten temple turned inward. Towering walls of bronze gleam dully under the starlight, their surfaces embossed with scenes of heroes ensnared in threadzo, Dionysus dodging Scylla's jaws, Theseus navigating the Minotaur's larynx panel, a warning etched by divine hands. This is the labyrinth of echoed lies, a mythic construct whispered in the annals of Greek mythology, akin to the historical Cretan maze. Built for King Minos to imprison his enemies, a local legend from the island's palaces where artisans forged such enclosures with Phoenician bronze to symbolize the inescapable weave of fate, blending mortal architecture with the deities' unyielding designs. The entrance yawns before you, a portal framed by coiled serpents in relief, their eyes set with lapis lazuli that catches the omens above. The stars now clustering in unnatural density, as if drawn by the vow's pull. Alara hesitates at the threshold, the nectar's warmth still coursing through her veins, causing her shadow to flicker erratically against the bronze. Murmuring Hermes' jests in a voice too soft to discern but insistent enough to prickle your skin. The trickster's gift reveals the illusions, she says, her tone methodical, building the suspense of intrigue. But the fate weavers spin deeper deceptions here. We enter together, guided by the relic's hum. You follow her inside, the air shifting from forest freshness to a stifling closeness, thick with the metallic temps of polished bronze and the underlying must of stone long sealed from wind. The walls close in immediately, twisting left, then right in a disorienting spiral, their surfaces cool and unyielding to the touch, sweating faint condensation that beads like tears from the god's own forges. Now, amplify every step, your sandals slapping against the floor, Alara's breath steady yet measured. The distant drip of water from some hidden crevice, creating a sonic texture that disorients, turning sound into a labyrinth of its own. Lost in the twisting maze, you press on, the star omens filtering through narrow slits, high above like fractured prophecies, casting elongated beams that dance across the walls and birth illusions, shadows morphing into spectral figures, whispers coalescing into half-formed words that taunt with fragments of the oath, forbidden, name, cost. These are the deceptions spun by the fate weavers. The Moirai themselves, archetypes of destiny in this pantheon, three sisters who measure, draw, and cut the threads of life with impartial shears, their interventions escalating trials by weaving psychological riddles into the fabric of choice. Alara clutches the amulet, its hum rising in pitch, syncing with the nectar's magic to pierce the veils. What seemed a solid wall shimmers in parts, revealing a passage lined with looms of ethereal silk, threads glowing with the light of distant eclipses. They test resolve here, she explains, her voice echoing back in mocking layers. Riddles that burrow into the mind, demanding truths at the blood price of doubt. The first illusion manifests as a crossroads where three paths converge, each guarded by a spectral sister Clotho, the spinner, Lachesis, the elater, Atropos, the cutter, their forms veiled in mist, hands busy at invisible spindles. The air hums with the whir of spinning wheels, a sound like iron on iron softened by silk. An incense wafts from braziers set into the walls, its salt-laced smoke curling in patterns that form questions in the air. Clotho speaks first, her voice a silken thread unraveling, queen of Mycenae. You who swore the taboo, what thread do you offer to weave past the river's memory? A lie of loyalty, or truth of defiance? The psychological riddle strikes deep, testing Alara's core, the costs of the guardian's toll. The traded recollection of Theranos steps now a void that the nectar's shadow jests amplify with cruel echoes. You stand beside her, the bronze walls pressing closer. their embossings seeming to writhe under the starlight. Sensory creep intensifying as the floor tilts subtly, disorienting balance like a sacred bargain gone awry. Alara pauses, the amulet vibrating against her chest. Its quirky detail emerging in this trial, forged with a bizarre anomaly from Athena's own loom. The obsidian doesn't merely hum, but threads a single, anomalous fiber from the relic into the air, when faced with Fate Weaver's deceptions, a golden strand that hovers, pointing toward truth while repelling lies with a faint, stinging static. A rule that enforces the artifact's taboo by marking the bearer's resolve with a temporary glow on their skin. Like scars of light that fade only after the riddle's resolution, a function that escalates the choice with visible consequences. She inhales the incense, its damp cedar notes grounding her, and responds with calm cadence. I offer the truth of defiance woven with the lie that gods are unmoved. For their thrones quake at mortal will, as the prophecy foretold. The golden thread extends from the amulet, stinging the air as it aligns with the left path, the spectral Clothos form dissolving in a puff of mist, her whisper lingering like a proverb. Threads twist, but cuts endure. Deeper in Lachesis, awaits at a chamber where walls reflect infinite versions of you, both Alara crowned in glory, then broken. You as witness, then betrayer, the illusions, psychological barbs that probe the vow's fragility. What lot do you claim beyond the Oathkeeper's chains? She intones, her allotting rod tapping a rhythm that syncs with your heartbeat. The riddle coils around the trickster's bargain, Hermes' nectar, causing shadows to multiply, jesting about divine whims and overlapping echoes. Illyra's skin glows faintly from the amulet's mark, a scar of light tracing her arm. She counters, the lot of challenge where sacred bargains demand scars. Not submission, remember the cryptic whisper from the seer, that grief shifts with the stars. The thread guides again, parting the mirrors with a resonant clang. Motifs braiding tighter, the river crossings echo in watery reflections on the floor, cursed relics humming in harmony with the loom's whir, star omens piercing the slits to illuminate the path. Atropos confronts in the heart, her shears glinting like obsidian edges. The air thick with the scent of snipped threads, ozone, and earth. What end do you court in the eclipse's shadow? The final riddle tests ultimate resolve, illusions of Olympus crumbling under Alara's assault swirling around. The psychological tension peaking as the nectar's taboo whispers temptations of retreat. A confessional interlude surfaces from her, intimate amid the bronze. In this unraveling, I confess the fear that my thread frays too soon. Yet the relic's light steals me, a pilgrim's fire against the deity's cold weave, she declares, an end where heroes rewrite fates. Cutting oaths that bind silence when stars shift, grief shifts with them, as the inscriptions promised. The shears snap empty, the chamber opening to a spiral stair ascending. The Fate Weaver's illusions shattering like fragile clay, leaving only the hum and glow as remnants. You emerge from the labyrinth's grip, the bronze walls receding behind. The epic scope of Alara's journey clarified, the resolve hardened. The path to Olympus one twist closer, with callbacks to the oracle's words and the river's toll weaving cohesion. But as the stair winds upward, toward a plateau where the blood moon's echo lingers in the sky, the question that remains pulling you into the ritual's light is whether the unraveled lies have truly freed her or merely delayed the Fate Weaver's inevitable cut in the starlit right ahead. The spiral stair from the labyrinth deposits you and Alara onto a wind-swept plateau high above the river's valley, where the air thins and sharpens with the bite of alpine herb steam, and wild sage crushed underfoot, mingling with the faint, lingering metallic temps from the bronze walls below. The stars overhead burn brighter now, unfiltered by the canopy, their patterns aligning in a celestial dance that foreshadows the darkening to come, omens etched against the velvet sky like threads pulled taut by the Moirai themselves. Alara's skin still bears the faint glow from the amulets, mark a scar of light fading slowly. As the nectar's effects waned, her shadow no longer lagging with Hermes, jests but trailing straight a sign that the deceptive bargain has held for this trial. The rite awaits under the eclipse, she says, her voice steady in the epic cadence guiding you toward a circle of weathered standing stones that crown the plateau, their surfaces inscribed with spirals and serpents, relics of ancient mysteries where heroes once communed with deities under the watchful eyes of the cosmos. You step into the circle, the stones forming a natural temple, each monolith rough-hewn from local limestone, veined with quartz that catches the starlight and scatters it like fallen prophecies. This plateau, echoing the high sanctuaries of Greek mythology, recalls the historical Spartan legend of Queen Telesilla, who rallied women to defend the city against invaders in the 5th century BCE, invoking Artemis' aid in a desperate rite that turned the tide. A local tale passed through generations in Laconia, where such eclipses were seen as signs from the huntress goddess, awakening divine wrath against those who defied sacred orders, much like Alara's vow, now stirs the dormant fury of Olympus. The air hums with anticipation, the sonic textures of the sacred space emerging, the low whistle of wind through the stone's fissures like whispered oaths, the distant toll of a temple bell from Mycenae far below, syncing with your pulse, the subtle crackle of dry grass underfoot, ready for the incense's flame. Lara kneels at the circle's center, where a shallow altar of flat slate awaits, its edges worn smooth by countless rituals etched with a single epigraph. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. From a pouch at her belt, she draws bundles of incense and frankincense harvested from southern groves, their resins sticky and aromatic, evoking the trades that linked Mycenaean ports to distant lands in the Bronze Age. The amulet rests on the altar now, its obsidian surface absorbing the starlight, and she strikes a flint against bronze, igniting a small brazier that sends sparks dancing upward like miniature eclipses. This ancient rite, she explains, her tone methodical yet building suspense, invokes the Spartan legacy to stir the gods' attention, a sacred bargain where incense carries my challenge across the veil. But the eclipse will darken the rite, demanding blood price in revelation. You kneel beside her, the stone's chill seeping through your kitten, feeling the psychological tension coil as the sky begins to change, the moon's edge nibbling at the sun's corona, a celestial darkening that bathes the plateau in twilight's hush, stars winking out one by one. The incense ignites with a hiss, smoke rising in thick tendrils that twist toward the heavens, carrying scents of salt and earth, damp cedar notes grounding the ethereal lift. Alara chants in a low, rhythmic cadence, her words drawing from hymnal fragments of Greek mythology. Artemis of the wilds, Athena of the wise weave, hear the queen who crosses rivers and unravels labyrinths. By Telesilla's stand, awaken the wrath dormant in your halls, for the forbidden name approaches your thrones. The smoke forms shapes in the dimming light, hunting hounds. Olive branches, a labyrinth's coil motifs braiding with the prophecy's threads. The cursed relic humming in response, its vibrations syncing with the wind's whistle. As the eclipse deepens, the plateau plunges into an unnatural dusk, the air cooling sharply stones, sweating faint moisture like cold sweat before a trial. The sonic textures intensifying, the incenses pop and sigh, the growing rumble of thunder from afar, the subtle shift of stars as the darkening peaks blotting all but the altar's glow. In this moment of cosmic shadow, the rite escalates, invoking the Spartan legend's essence. How? Telesilla's women armed with pitchers and defiance channeled Artemis' fury to repel the Argive horde. A historical echo where divine wrath manifested as unyielding resolve, much as Alara seeks now to rouse the deity's ire into a force she can wield. She pricks her palm again, adding a drop of blood to the brazier. It sizzles, releasing a plume that spirals higher. The blood price manifesting as visions flickering in the smoke, glimpses of Olympus halls. Gods stirring in their seats, Zeus' brow furrowing. Hera's eyes narrowing, the psychological intrigue of their pantheon's tension surfacing, mirroring her own inner storm. The amulet's quirky detail reveals itself under the eclipse's taboo. This artifact, touched by Apollo's light in its forging, possesses a bizarre function where, during celestial darkenings, it doesn't just hum, but projects a holographic echo of the invoker's intenta, shimmering silhouette of Alara herself. Armored in light, challenging the Thunderer directly, a rule that the relic enforces by drawing faint lines of star-omen energy on the ground. Anomalous threads that connect the mortal rite to divine senses. Awakening wrath with the texture of a whispered provocation, like iron ringing under held breath. The vision solidifies briefly. the ethereal Ilara raising a spectral spear toward the eclipsed sky. Her form echoing the heroes of old who bargained with deities at such junctures, costs etched in scars of ambition. You watch, immersed in the second-person depth, the smoke enveloping you like a river's mist, eclipses corona flaring at the edges, casting the stones in a ring of firelight. A confessional interlude emerges from Ilara amid the chant, her voice intimate against the rumble, in this darkening. I confess the thrill and terror of stirring gods who slumber uneasily, their wrath a double-edged blade like the Spartans' pitchers turned weapons yet for the forgotten. I invoke it fully, the incense thickens, the rite reaching its crescendo as the bloody-infused smoke pierces the eclipse, carrying the challenge upward. Sacred bargains hinted at in the visions. Where boons demand traded memories or owed silence, the underworld guides path looming in shadowed wisps, oathkeepers' chains clinking in the thunder's prelude. As the moon's shadow begins to slide away, light creeping back to reclaim the plateau, the amulet's projection fades, leaving the altar smoldering and the air charged with the rite's consequence. Divine wrath awakened, not in fury yet, but in a subtle shift, like the first ripple of a river crossing stirred by an unseen hand. Ilara rises her palm scar, a fresh reminder the psychological tension of the invocation hanging heavy, the epic scope of her defiance now broadcast. To the deities' callbacks to the oracle's prophecy, and the labyrinth's riddles weaving tighter cohesion in the returning light. The stars re-emerge, their omens sharper, grief shifting as foretold, but the rumble of thunder grows nearer, echoing the Spartan legend's awakened force. But the question that remains as the eclipse wanes and the plateau brightens is whose wrath will descend first, the Oathkeeper's iron judgment or the gods'? Collective storm, and whether the rite has fortified Ilara or merely hastened the trial's blood price. The eclipse's corona flares fully, now restoring light to the plateau in a rush that scatters the lingering incense smoke like startled birds. The standing stones, standing sentinel once more in the crisp dawn air, their inscriptions catching the first rays with a subtle gleam. Ilara gathers the amulet from the altar, its surface still warm from the rite, the projected silhouette's energy fading into a faint hum that vibrates against her palm, a reminder of the awakened wrath now stirring in the thunder's approach. The rumble intensifies, rolling down from the mountains like the god's own footsteps. And the ground trembles faintly, dislodging pebbles that skitter across the slate as if fleeing the inevitable. The invocation has called them, she says, her voice threaded with epic resolve, and first comes the enforcer, avows the Oathkeeper, their stern guardian of the taboos we mortals dare not break. We face his trial now, where promises past and present collide. You rise with her, the psychological tension from the rite, coiling tighter, the star omens above, resolving into clearer patterns as the sky lightens, motifs of fate braiding the path forward toward a jagged cleft in the hillside that yawns. Like a mouth forged in iron, you descend into the cleft, the air growing heavier with each step, laced with the acrid scent of heated metal and the underlying temps of rust from unseen depths evoking the forges where Hephaestus crafted the chains that bound Prometheus to his rock. The walls narrow to a chamber of raw granite lit by veins of glowing ore that pulse like veins in a colossal heart, casting erratic shadows that dance across the floor, strewn with shards of broken pottery vessels once filled with libations to seal oaths, now shattered symbols of defiance. In the heart of this forge-like sanctum stands the Oathkeeper, a stern figure towering twice your height. His form hewn from living bronze, muscles corded like twisted cables, eyes burning with the unquenchable fire of divine judgment. He is Horkos, personified archetype of retribution in Greek mythology. The deity who punishes perjurers by dogging their steps until madness claims them, his presence a threshold that enforces the unyielding laws of deities with iron impartiality. The chamber's sonic textures assault you immediately, the constant ring of iron on iron from hammers, striking anvils in the walls, as if the mountain itself forges chains. The low groan of heated metal cooling in troughs of water, steam hissing upward in clouds that taste of salt, and sweat, the Oathkeeper's breath, a rhythmic bellows that syncs with the thunder outside. In the historical lore of ancient Greece, such enforcers echoed the Spartan agoge, the rigorous training where young warriors swore unbreakable oaths of loyalty under penalty of death. a local legend from Laconia, where broken vows manifested as public trials by fire and chain, mirroring the epic trials of heroes like the Argonauts, who faced divine retribution for oaths sworn to the gods during their quest for the Golden Fleece. Alara halts before him, the amulets hum rising in challenge while you stand at her side, the ground vibrating underfoot, as the Oathkeeper raises a massive strict gauntlet chains dangling from his wrist, like serpents, each link etched with spiraling curses that seem to writhe in the firelight. Who dares invoke the Thunderer's wrath with a vow unbound? He booms, his voice echoing off the granite like a temple bell tolled in doom, the air shimmering with heat from his metallic form. Queen Alara, your taboo seals fate? But first, confront the broken promises that chain the soul. With a gesture, the chains uncoil, slithering across the floor toward you, both their links clinking in a rising crescendo that manifests the trial, illusions of Alara's past oaths materializing in the air, each broken vow forging a new length of iron, her youthful promise to the priests for Theron's health snapped by grief, the palace oaths of obedience to the gods frayed by the seer's prophecy, the river's memory toll now ringing as a heavy manacle. The psychological intrigue peaks as these chains wrap around her limbs, not wounding flesh, but tugging at emotions, forcing confrontation with the costs. Traded memories resurfacing in flashes, the warmth of Theron, steps lost to the Acheron, the labyrinth's riddles echoing doubts, the right's blood price stirring guilt like damp cedar smoke in the lungs. You feel the chains wait vicariously, cold iron brushing your skin as they encircle Alara, the trial demanding she relive and renounce each link, the Oathkeeper's eyes unblinking flames that bore into her resolve. Speak the truths of your past, he demands, or be bound eternal. A relic cursed to silence before Olympus. The air thickens with steam the hammers, ring intensifying to a cacophony that drowns thought, sensory creep enveloping the chamber, walls sweating rivulets of molten glow. The floor heating beneath your feet like a sacrificial pyre, the chain's texture rough and unyielding, etched with proverbs from stone-cut epigraphs. Oaths live in the cut, now alive with vibration. Alara struggles against the first chain, her voice emerging calm yet suspenseful. Methodical in the face of divine sternness, I swore obedience in youth. But the gods' caprice broke it first. Therein fever no fault of mine, yet their silence demanded mine in return. The link shatters with a resonant crack, fragments dissolving into sparks, but the next coils tighter, invoking the river crossing. The memory I traded was no betrayal but payment for the threshold to heroes. Paths where deities exact scars for their boons. The amulet flares then, its quirky detail unveiling in the trial's heat. This cursed relic, fused with Horko's own essence during a forgotten forge rite, possesses a bizarre temperament under oath enforcers. Gaze it doesn't merely vibrate, but secretes a thin oil from its spirals, anomalous and slick, that weakens iron chains on contact while burning the bearer's skin with a fleeting tattoo of the vow escor. A rule enforcing the artifact's taboo by marking the confrontation with a temporary sigil that glows during lies. A function that escalates the trial with visible authenticity, turning the Oathkeeper's judgment into a dance of truth and consequence. Alara presses the amulet to a chain, the oil hissing as it spreads. Her palms searing with a glowing spiral that mirrors the relic's own scar of defiance that fades as the iron crumbles. The psychological tension releasing in waves of relief and pain, you witness her confront the deepest link. The palace oath shattered by the forbidden name's whisper. The rite's invocation awakening wrath. I renounce the silence, she declares, for in Greek mythology, heroes like Jason faced such enforcers, and emerged unbound, paying blood price in growth. Not chains. A confessional interlude breaks through her labored breaths. Intimate amid the hammer's din, in this binding. I confess the pull of old promises, like rivers dragging at the soul. Yet the relic's burn reminds me defiance forges stronger than iron. A pilgrim's step toward the deity's reckoning. The final chain snaps, the Oathkeeper stepping back as the chamber quiets. The steam clearing to reveal paths branching deeper into the mountain, motifs recurring, the labyrinth's echoes in the granite's twists. Star omens glimpsed through vents above, sacred bargains hinted in the fading sigils. Alara stands unbowed, the amulet cooling, her past confronted and shed like rusted links. The epic scope of her challenge advancing the trial past, but the thunder outside now a steady drum, calling the underworld's guide. The Oathkeeper's form solidifies into statue stillness, his voice a final rumble. Vows tested. But Olympus watches. The psychological weight lifts slightly. Cohesion woven from callbacks to the seer's words and the trickster's advice, the path to divine confrontation clearer yet fraught. But as the chain's echoes fade into the hammer's slowing ring, the question that remains, drawing you toward chthonic depths, is what lament the underworld guide will share in exchange for this hard-won freedom. And if Alara's confronted past has truly unshackled her, or merely forged new bonds in the shadows below. The Oathkeeper's statue form recedes into the chamber's gloom as the branching paths resolve into a single descent. A steep incline carved into the mountain's heart that spirals downward like the Moire's own spindle. The air growing cooler and denser with each winding step. Laced with the earthy musk of subterranean springs and the faint perpetual dampness that clings to stone like unspoken regrets. Alara leads, her palms sigil from the trial now a dull ache. The amulet's hum softening to a rhythmic pulse that echoes the distant drip of water ahead. Sinking with the thunder's muffled rumble from above, you follow the granite walls brushing your shoulders. Their surfaces slick with condensation that beads and falls in slow rivulets, evoking the sweat of cold stone and sacred underworld shrines. The psychological tension from the iron chains lingers, a traded weight in your limbs. As motifs of fate recur, the labyrinth's twists mirrored in the incline's coils. Star omens glimpsed through narrow fissures as pinpricks of light fading into blackness. The sacred bargain of the right now, pulling you toward chthonic depths, where deities enforce their costs in silence and shadow. Deeper you go, the path leveling into a cavern vast as a forgotten temple, its ceiling lost in darkness. Walls veined with luminous fungi that cast a pallid ethereal glow, illuminating a river of ink-black water that bisects the space. Not the Acheron revisited, but a tributary to Hades' realm, the Lethean mortal echo where souls drift toward oblivion. This descent mirrors the historical Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece. Secretive rites held in the 7th century BCE at the sanctuary near Athens, where initiates journeyed into simulated underworlds to commune with Demeter and Persephone. Emerging with promises of eternal life, a local legend from Attica that blended terror and revelation. Teaching mortals the gods' unyielding laws through symbolic crossings that demanded the blood price of secrecy upon pain of madness. The air hums with a low, mournful current, the sonic textures of this sacred space unfolding. The river's ceaseless lap against obsidian shores like whispered oaths dissolving. The faint echo of distant wails. Softened by the damp cedar groves lining the banks, their twisted trunks exuding resin that fills the cavern with a woody, incense-like aroma, grounding the ethereal chill. From the water rises the underworld guide, a spectral ferryman pawing. It's a skiff of weathered cypress material sacred to funerary rites, its wood unrotting in the depths. It's his form. Translucent, cloaked in a tattered peplus that trails like mist, eyes hollow yet piercing with the wisdom of eons. He is Thanatos' kin, or perhaps a shade elevated to guide archetype of the psychopomp. In Greek mythology, ferrying not just the dead, but defiant souls like Ilaris's presence escalating trials with laments that reveal the deity's hidden frailties. The skiff grounds with a gentle scrape, and he extends a bony hand, voice a hollow whisper that carries over the water. Queen who shatters chains, you seek Hades' halls to challenge the Thunderer. I will guide you across this Lethean flow, but hear my lament first. The price of passage is to carry the echo of the divine sorrow. Ilara nods. Stepping aboard with you, the wood creaking underfoot, the river's chill seeping through as the pole dips, propelling you into the current with a rhythmic splash that syncs with the amulet's pulse. As the skiff glides, the ferryman shares his tale in a cadence slow and deliberate, building suspense through the calm intimacy of oral tradition. His translucent form flickering in the fungi's light. Long before your vow in the season when pomegranates ripened under Demeter's gaze, Persephone descended to these groves, not in tearful abduction but with a hidden laughter that the myths suppress. She, queen of the dead, found joy in the eternal damp cedar, where roots twist like lovers' fingers and the air tastes of forgotten springs. The quirky detail emerges in his lament tied to Persephone's crown. This mythic artifact woven from asphodel and shadow threads by the fate weavers possesses A bizarre function in Hades' realm, it doesn't merely adorn but amplifies the wearer's emotions into echoes that reverberate through the cedar groves, a rule enforcing her dual nature, where laughter taboo in the underworld's gloom manifests as anomalous blooms of pale flowers on barren branches, their petals whispering the sound back eternally, a texture like salt incense mingled with mirth, turning her hidden joy into a perpetual, haunting melody that only guides like him can hear. Cost that scars the goddess with isolation amid her rule. You lean forward, the skiff rocking gently, the damp cedar scent intensifying as groves close in, their branches trailing in the water like grasping hands, motifs braiding the journey. River crossings renewed in this Lethean flow, where sips would trade memories anew. Cursed relics humming in harmony with the crown's echoes. Star omens replaced by the fungi's glow, celestial signs transposed to chthonic lights. The ferryman's voice weaves psychological intrigue. Surfacing the gods' human frailties, her laughter rang first in spring's thaw, a sound like temple bells lightened by breeze. Blooming flowers where none should grow defiance against Hades' somber throne, much as your challenge stirs Olympus. But the deity silenced it, deeming joy a taboo in realms of oath and price, binding her with sacred bargains that demanded traded silences. Scars of suppressed mirth etched in the grove's resin. The echoes begin then. Faint at first, a silvery tinkle filtering through the cedar, Persephone's hidden laughter replaying in loops. Quirky and anomalous, causing the skiff's wood to warm subtly. As if the crown's function bleeds into the world above. It's a bizarre temperament that tempts listeners to forget their sorrows, yet enforces the guide's lament by stirring deeper grief for the god's caprice. Ilara listens, her face illuminated in the pallid light, the amulet vibrating against the laughter's cadence. Confessional interlude surfacing from the ferryman as he pulls deeper, his hollow eyes meeting yours, as one who ferries the defiant. I confess this tale weighs on me like the Letheus current, the goddess's joy, laughter carved in root. Laughter lives in the bloom, but blooms fade in shadow. It reveals the pantheon's tensions where heroes pay blood price for glimpses of such truths. Emerging changed, like initiates from Eleusis with vows of silence. The groves thicken, branches brushing the skiff with damp needles that release bursts of resin, sonic textures enveloping, the laughter's echo mingling with the river's lap. The poles splash punctuating the lament, the distant wails harmonizing into a hymnal fragment when shadows bloom. Oaths consume. You feel the psychological tension of the descent, the epic scope of Elara's path, intersecting with divine sorrow. Callbacks to the Oracle's prophecy and the Oathkeeper's chains weaving. Cohesion the river's toll, now layered with Persephone's hidden defiance, a mirror to her own. The skiff nears the far shore, a ledge of basalt steps leading upward to Hades' veiled gates. The laughter fading into whispers as the crown's anomaly recedes, leaving the air heavier with revelation's weight. Ilara touches the amulet, absorbing the lament's essence. Her resolve deepened by the god's concealed vulnerabilities. The sacred bargain of this crossing sealing her toward the obsidian altars ahead. But as the skiff grounds and the ferryman's form dissolves into mist, his final echo lingering in the cedar, the question that remains, propelling you toward the temple's depths, is whether Persephone's hidden laughter will ally with Alara's challenge, or serve as another taboo, drawing Hades' own price in the bargain to come. The ferryman's mist dissolves fully as you and Ilara climb the basalt steps from the Lethean. Shore the cavern's pallid glow giving way to a corridor of polished black stone that gleams like liquid. Night its walls veined with threads of silver quartz that pulse faintly, as if the mountain's heart beats in rhythm with the amulet's hum. The air shifts from damp cedar to a drier, sharper incense sandalwood and amber, evoking the sacred fumes of temples where wisdom's price is weighed. Persephone's echoed laughter lingers in your ears like a fading omen, a psychological thread tying the underworld's hidden joys to Alara's. Apsicaterers, to send up some realms. A temple of obsidian alters its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. Supported by columns carved to resemble coiled owls and olive branches, symbols of the goddess who presides here. Star omens filter through a distant oculus above, their light scattering across the floor in fractured patterns, hinting at eclipses past and the thunder's rumble now a steady undercurrent, as if Zeus himself drums his fingers on the cosmos. You step onto the temple floor, cool and unyielding underfoot, the obsidian polished to a mirror sheen that reflects distorted versions of yourselves, Solara taller, resolute. You a steadfast shadow while braziers along the walls burn with low flames. Casting the air in hues of amber and indigo, the sonic textures unfolding, the soft crackle of embers, the distant echo of water dripping from the corridor behind, like tears of the Lethe, and a subtle chime from windless bells hanging from the columns, tolling oaths unspoken. This sanctum, woven into Greek mythology's fabric, echoes the historical Parthenon on Athens' Acropolis. Dedicated to Athena in the 5th century BCE, where priestesses performed nocturnal rites to invoke the goddess's strategic wisdom during the Persian Wars. A local legend from Attica claiming that such altars forged from sacred black stone quarried near Eleusis absorbed the blood of offerings to forge. Unbreakable pacts blending divine boons with mortal costs in rituals that tested heroes' cunning against the gods' caprice. Ilara approaches the central altar, a massive slab of obsidian veined with gold, surface etched with labyrinthine maps of battles won through intellect, the amulet's hum intensifying as if recognizing kin in the stone. From the altars, shadow materializes Athena, archetype of wisdom and war in this pantheon. Her form clad in a gleaming aegis of bronze scales that shimmers like a storm cloud. Owl perched on her shoulder with eyes that pierce the gloom, spear in hand topped with a gorgon's head that stares unblinking. She is no distant deity here, but a threshold ally, her presence escalating Ilara's trials with negotiations laced in psychological intrigue, the unyielding laws of Olympus manifesting in her measured gaze. Queen of Mycenae, Athena intones, her voice resonant like the clash of shields in a phalanx, calm yet commanding. You cross rivers and unravel fates to challenge my father's thunder. The sacred bargain calls, approach the altar, and name your terms. But know the blood price, knowledge traded for power, scar that wisdom demands. Ilara kneels, the temple's chill seeping through her chiton, and you stand beside her, the air thickening with the incense's rise, its smoke curling toward Athena like tendrils seeking judgment. The negotiation unfolds in ritual cadence, Ilara's voice methodical, building suspense as she lays her hands on the altar, the obsidian warming beneath her palms. Goddess of strategy, born from Zeus's brow in full armor, grant me a boon against his thunderous shield of cunning, to pierce the pantheon's doubts, as Persephone's laughter hints at their frailties. In exchange, I offer a scar of forgotten knowledge, the lore of my lineage's erased heroes, traded to your keeping. Athena circles the altar slowly, her aegis whispering against the stone. The owl hooting softly, sound like iron on iron, echoing the Oathkeeper's chains while the temple's bells chime in response motifs recurring. The river's toll and the dripping echoes, cursed relics harmonizing with the altar's veins, sacred bargains. Now the core their costs etched in the air like star omens frozen in time. The goddess nods, her eyes gray as storm clouds locking onto Ilara's, surfacing the psychological tension of divine dealings, boons that reshape mortals but demand silence or scars. As in the tales of Odysseus receiving Athena's aid, only to wander 20 years in traded exile, Athena extends her spear, pricking Ilara's forearm with the tip not deeply, but enough to draw a line of blood that wells crimson against the obsidian, sizzling faintly as it absorbs into the stone. The price is set, she declares. Your forgotten knowledge tales of Mycenaean queens who bartered with deities before the Trojan walls, erased from scrolls, to appease Hera's jealousy now mine, a thread woven into my loom of fates. The scar forms immediately, a raised line glowing gold before fading to pale skin, the traded essence manifesting as visions flickering across the altar. Spectral figures of ancient heroines negotiating eclipses in labyrinths. Their voices whispering proverbs like oaths live in the cut, then dissolving into the stone. leaving Alara with a void of scar, not just physical but mental, where once detailed lineages now blur like mist over the Acheron. The boon follows, Athena's hand pressing to the amulet. It flares, infusing Alara with strategic insight, visions of Zeus's thunderbolts, weaknesses, patterns in the storm. Taboos in his rage is imprinted like a map in her mind, a power against the thunderer's might. Yet laced with consequence, the scars itch, a constant reminder of the cost. Traded knowledge that might one day unravel if the bargain sours. The amulet's quirky detail reveals itself in this pact, tied to Athena's aegis, this cursed relic. Once a shard from the goddess's own shield, shattered in the Gigantamachi, it possesses a bizarre, anomalous function during sacred bargains. It doesn't merely absorb blood, but refracts the traded essence into a temporary aura around the bearer. A shimmering veil that repels lesser divine probes, but enforces a rule where overuse drains the scar site of sensation, turning it numb as owed silence, a texture like cold stone desensitized, escalating the choice with sensory prices that mirror the deity's own hidden vulnerabilities. Alara rises, the aura flickering around her like starlight, the temple's incense thickening as Athena seals the negotiation with a nod, her spear retracting. Use this wisely. Mortal, the pantheon's tensions fray under such challenges as the oracle foresaw. But remember, boons carry the blood price of vigilance. Zeus's thunder will test this shield. The goddess fades into the altar's shadow, her owl taking flight toward the oculus, leaving the chamber humming with the bargains. Echo the psychological intrigue of the exchange, hanging heavy the epic scope of Alara. Path now armed with wisdom, S-edge callbacks to the seer's prophecy and the underworld's lament, weaving deeper cohesion. A confessional interlude surfaces from Alara as the scar throbs, her voice intimate amid the fading chimes, entreating that ancient lore. I confess the hollowness, like a river's memory stolen anew, yet Athena's boon steals me a pilgrim's map against the storm. Where heroes pay scars for the gods' fleeting favor, the aura settles, empowering her steps toward an archway leading upward. The thunders rumble closer now, motifs of fate propelling the journey. Labyrinth echoes in the temple's maps. Cursed relics empowered by the trade. Sacred bargains fulfilled yet ominous. But as the altar cools and the incense clears, revealing the archway's glow, the question that remains drawing you toward the relic's awakening is whether Athena's boon will withstand Zeus's full wrath, or demand yet another price from Alara's fading scars in the visions to come. The archway from Athena's temple yields to a narrower passage, its walls transitioning from obsidian to a mosaic of veined marble that gleams with embedded flecks of meteorite iron, catching the filtered starlight from cracks above and casting the corridor in a stippled glow like the cosmos pressed into stone. Alara's scar from the bargain itches faintly under the aura's veil, a subtle reminder of the traded knowledge now woven into the goddess's loom. As the amulet at her throat pulses stronger, syncing with the thunder's distant growl that reverberates through the earth like a deity's impatient summons, the air carries a charged dryness, laced with the faint ozone of impending storm, mingling with the lingering amber from the incense, propelling you forward through twists that echo the labyrinth's earlier coils, motifs of fate recurring in the passage's subtle inclines, rivers crossed in memory, sacred bargains, sealed yet echoing. The relic stirs, Alara murmurs, her voice a calm anchor in the building suspense, as if Athena's touch has awakened its deeper secrets, drawing us toward visions that the gods sought to erase. You walk beside her, the marble cool underfoot, its patterns shifting like star omens under your gaze. The psychological tension of the pantheon's fraying threads coiling tighter with each step. The passage opens into a domed chamber, a natural vault hewn by ancient quakes, its ceiling a lattice of fissures, through which starlight pours in shafts, illuminating a pedestal of unadorned basalt at the center, upon which rests no new artifact but a cradle for the amulet itself, etched with concentric circles that mirror the relic spirals. This space, hidden in the mountain's folds, evokes the historical oracle at Dodona in Epirus, one of Greece's oldest sanctuaries from the 13th century BCE, where priests interpreted Zeus's will through the rustle of sacred oaks and the clanging of bronze cauldrons. a local legend tying the site to visions of heroic lineages revealed under star omens, blending divine prophecy with mortal ancestries that the gods occasionally purged from memory to maintain their unchallenged reign. The chamber's sonic textures envelop you, the low hum of the amulet amplifying in resonance with the dome's acoustics, turning whispers into echoes. The subtle creak of stones settling like breaths held in ritual. The distant thunder now a rhythmic underscore, iron on iron from Olympus forges, syncing with the relic's pulse as Alara approaches the pedestal. She lifts the amulet from her neck, handling it with deliberate care, the obsidian warm and vibrating in her palm, its surface now humming with anomalous star omen. Energy flecks within the stone, catching the shafts of light and refracting them into swirling patterns that dance. Across the walls like constellations come alive. You stand close, the air ionizing with a faint tingle, as if the relic draws power from the fissures above. The quirky detail of this cursed artifact unfolding in its awakening, forged not solely by Hephaestus but tempered in a fallen star's crater during the Titanomachy. It possesses a bizarre function when infused with a goddess' boon like Athena's. The spirals do not merely vibrate but channel celestial energy to trigger visions, projecting holographic lineages in the air, yet enforcing a taboo rule, where each revelation erases a fragment of the dumb's present, emotions an anomalous trade that turns joy to numbness or resolve to fleeting doubt. Its texture manifesting as a starry mist that clings to the skin like salt incense, escalating the handling's cost with psychological scars of disconnection. A price the deities embedded to guard erased histories. As Alara places the amulet in the cradle, the hum crescendos into a resonant chime. The star omen energy surging through the chamber, the fissures above flaring brighter, blotting momentarily as if a minor eclipse stirs, motifs braiding the moment, the lethes echoes in the mist's cool touch, Oathkeeper's chains symbolized in the light's binding webs, sacred bargains now visualized in the relic's glow. Visions ignite in the air before you, ethereal figures materializing in the starry haze. Alara's lineage unfolding like a scroll unrolled by fate weavers tied to mortal heroes, long erased from the annals. First, a bronze-clad warrior queen from Mycenaean times, her spear raised against a sea of shadows whispering. Of battles where she bartered with Poseidon for waves to swallow invading fleets, only to trade her voice for the boon, silenced in godly caprice. Then a shadowy figure akin to an Argonaut, Elara's distant kin, who navigated the clashing rocks with Hermes, cunning his lineage purged when he uttered a forbidden name in hubris, the gods weaving his tale into oblivion to preserve their myth's purity. The visions deepen, the mist thickening with sensory creep, the air humming like damp cedar charged with electricity, walls sweating luminous dew that drips with a sound like whispered proverbs, the thunder outside sinking to the hero's spectral heartbeats. You witness a heroine astride a celestial chariot, stars shifting around her as she challenged Hera's jealousy. Her erased saga, one of sacred bargains where boons demanded blood price and forgotten children, much like Theron's loss. Another, a labyrinth navigator whose thread led to underworld guides, or pact with Hades, sealing a taboo alliance that the pantheon dissolved, scattering her descendants' names like fallen leaves. Alara's face, illuminated in the projections, reveals the psychological intrigue. These ancestors embody her defiance. Heroes who crossed rivers of woe and endured eclipses of doubt. Their erasures a divine taboo to prevent mortal uprisings. Yet now, resurfacing through the relic's anomalous power, the starry mist clinging to her skin, numbing patches of resolve as the rule takes hold, a fleeting doubt creeping in like the lethes fog. In the vision's cascade, a confessional interlude emerges from Alara, her voice intimate amid the chimes. Seeing these erased threads, I confess the ache of connection lost my blood tied to such bold souls. Pilgrims who paid scars for glimpses of the deity's frailties, yet the mist's chill warns of the cost, emotions traded like memories in the river. The amulet's energy peaks, projecting a final vision, Alara herself woven into the lineage. Her challenge a culmination, the forbidden name on her lips echoing the hero's silenced cries. Proverbs from their tales seeding the air when stars shift. Grief shifts with them as the holograms swirl, revealing how Athena's traded knowledge preserved these secrets in the goddess's loom, a callback to the temple's altar. The mist dissipates slowly, the hum fading to a soft vibration. Leaving the chamber quieter, the starlight steadying through the fissures. The epic scope of Alara's path enriched the lineage's visions, fortifying her against Olympus. Yet the relic's taboo, exacting its price in numbed patches of her spirit, like scars of light from the labyrinth. She retrieves the amulet, its warmth returning, the anomalous energy spent, but lingering in faint sparks. The vision's revelations coiling the narrative tighter cohesion from the oracle's prophecy. The underworld's lament of hidden joys, the Oathkeeper's confronted past now layered with ancestral defiance. The thunder nears, the passage ahead, glowing with the promise of Olympus gates, the guardian's fury awaiting. But as the vision's mist clears and the amulet cools in Elara's hand, the question that remains, pulling you toward the sentinel's clash, is whether these awakened lineages will arm her against the colossal guardian, or awaken a deeper taboo, drawing the gods' retribution in waves of erased fury at the threshold's edge. The chamber's starry mist fully dissipates as you and Alara retrace the passage's incline. The amulet's faint sparks guiding your ascent through marble veins that now seem to pulse with the awakened lineage's vigor. The thunderous rumble evolving from distant growl to a percussive storm that shakes loose pebbles from the ceiling, scattering them like omens at your feet. The psychological weight of the visions clings a numbed patch of emotion where ancestral pride once burned. Traded for their revelations, yet Athena's aura veils Alara in strategic clarity. Her steps purposeful as the corridor climbs toward daylight, motifs of fate converging. The Lethe's fog echoed in lingering haze. Sacred bargains fortified by the relic's hum, labyrinth twists straightening into a final ascent. The gates loom, she says, her voice methodical amid the building gale, Olympus threshold where the guardian enforces the ultimate taboo defiance laid bare before the divine seat. Every step echoes the costs we've paid. But the lineage arms us. You emerge onto a windswept ledge, the mountain's peak-piercing clouds that swirl with. Lightnings flash the air, electric and biting. Scented with ozone and the crisp pine of high-altitude star omens wheeling overhead as the sun climbs toward midday, casting the colossal gates ahead in stark relief. The gates of Olympus rise like twin monoliths of celestial bronze, etched with scenes of the Titana. Inamachi gods hurling thunderbolts at primordial giants, their surfaces humming with latent power flanked by clouds that part to reveal a vast plaza of marble. Clouds ethereal, yet solid underfoot. This threshold in the heart of Greek mythology mirrors the historical legend of the Symplegades, the clashing rocks at the Hellespont that Jason and the Argonauts navigated in the 13th century. BCE, myth cycle, a local tale from the Bosphorus shores, where such guardians symbolize divine barriers to heroic quests, demanding blood price. In lost companions or scarred ships to allow passage, blending epic trials with the gods' unyielding tests of worthiness. The air thickens with the sonic textures of the divine frontier, the gate's low vibration like iron on iron amplified to thunder. Wind howling through their filigree like whispered taboos. The storm's cracks punctuating the calm before confrontation. Alara halts at the threshold, the amulet flaring in response to the bronze's resonance. Its awakened energy syncing with Athena's boon to sharpen her gaze on the sentinel materializing from the clouds, a colossal figure forged of storm cloud and adamant. Twice the height of the gate's eyes blazing with lightning fists clenched around chains that crackle with electric fury. You stand with Alara, the plaza's marble, cool and unyielding. As the threshold guardian advances, archetype of the unbreakable barrier in this pantheon. His form a swirling mass of tempests, personifying Zeus's own wrath. Escalating the trials with a taboo confrontation that forbids retreat defiance, met with strikes that echo the costs of every prior step. Mortal who crosses rivers and bargains with my kin, he booms. His voice a gale that whips your Keaton, lightning forking from his grasp, your vow assaults the throne. Endure my fury, or be scattered like the Titan's dust. The battle erupts without preamble. The Guardians first strike a chain whip that lashes toward Alara, crackling with starman energy drawn from the wheeling skies, forcing her to dodge with the agility Athena's insight imparts. The lash gouging the marble where it lands, sending shards flying like blood price paid in stone. You weave beside her, The air ionizing your skin with sensory creep, the ozone's sharp bite. Clouds sweating charged mist that beads and evaporates on touch. The guardian's footsteps thundering like oath-keepers' hammers, each impact echoing the psychological toll. Visions of erased heroes flickering in the lightning, reminding of traded memories and scars. Alara counters, pressing the amulet to summon the relic's anomalous power. It spirals glowing as she channels the lineage's strengths, a spectral spear of light lancing from her hand, striking the guardian's flank, where cloud flesh parts in a hiss of steam. The boon revealing a weakness in his stormy core. A taboo vulnerability where thunder's fury hides a core of fragile ether. The sentinel roars, chains whipping in a frenzy, one grazing Alara's shoulder, and searing a fresh scar that burns with the cost of defiance bane, radiating like the river's memory toll. Numbing her arm momentarily as the strike echoes her lineage's erasures. The psychological intrigue surfacing in the battle-esque rhythm, every parry a callback to the labyrinth-esque riddles. Every dodge a sacred bargain renewed against the gods' laws. You aid by distracting with shouts that draw a chain toward you, the impact glancing off the amulet's aura, which flares to repel it, the relic's quirky detail unveiling in the fray. This cursed artifact, embedded with a shard from the gates themselves during their forging by Cyclopes, possesses a bizarre function against Threshold Guardians. It doesn't merely project energy but absorbs strikes, echoes converting them into anomalous ripples that destabilize the Sentinel's form or rule, enforcing the taboo by imprinting each absorbed blow as a temporary tattoo on the bearer. Glowing lines that map the battle's costs like scars of light, escalating the confrontation with visible burdens that weigh the spirit. Their texture like iron rings under breath, turning fury into a mirror of mortal resilience. The guardian presses, his fists descending like eclipses blotting the sun, forcing Alara to roll across the plaza, marble scraping her knees as she rises to thrust the spectral spear again, piercing deeper, the ether core flickering, revealing glimpses of Olympus beyond, thrones of gold, deities stirring in tension. Lightning chains coil around her legs, dragging her toward the gates, the taboo intensifying as the strikes echo louder, each link clanging with the blood price of her path. Theron's laughter silenced. Athena's traded lore, the underworld's hidden joys, suppressed the psychological tension peaking in the storm's howl, wind tearing at your vision like labyrinth illusions. Alara breaks free the amulet, absorbing the chain's energy tattoos. Blooming across her arms in glowing spirals that chart the defiance's toll, her voice rising in calm cadence amid the chaos. Your fury guards a throne built on mortal scars. Oaths live in the cut, but cuts forge heroes unbound. The relic's ripples spread, destabilizing the sentinel. His form fractures, clouds dissipating in thunderclaps that shake the gates. The battle's epic scope unfolding, the threshold yielding. Yet the costs etched deeper, scars throbbing with every heartbeat. A confessional interlude breaks through Alara's labored breaths as the guardian staggers, her tone intimate against the gale. In this clash, I confess the weight of each echo, like rivers dragging at the soul anew. Yet the lineage's visions and Athena's shield remind me defiance endures. A pilgrim's storm against the deity's unyielding gale. The sentinel collapses into swirling mist, chains dissolving into harmless sparks. The gates creaking open with a resonant groan, revealing the plaza's inner sanctum where seers. Mists await motifs braiding to cohesion. The relics awakening, powering the victory star omens aligning in the clearing sky. Sacred bargains tested and proven. Alara stands, tattoos fading slowly, the amulet cooling. Her resolve unbowed, the confrontation endured, Olympus one barrier closer, the thunder now a triumphant roll. But as the gates swing wide, and the mist of fractured vision swirls from within, the question that remains, drawing you into the hallucinatory haze, is whether the guardian's fury has truly abated or merely awakened the seer's deeper fractures. Where the pantheon's tensions will mirror Alara's scars and revelations yet to unfold. The gate's resonant groan fades as you and Alara step through the bronze threshold, the plaza's marble clouds giving way to a veiled antechamber where the air thickens immediately with hallucinatory mists swirling in eddies that carry the sharp briny tang of salt incense, harvested from coastal shrines and burned in rituals to purify the soul before divine audiences. The storm's remnants linger in charged wisps, lightning's afterglow flickering through the haze like trapped star omens. The thunder now a subdued murmur that vibrates the ethereal floor, syncing with the amulet's soft hum, as if the relic resonates with the pantheon's awakening stirrings. Elara tattoos from the Guardian's clash fade to silvery outlines on her skin, a lingering scar of the confrontation's cost, while Athena's aura pulses faintly, sharpening your senses against the mist's disorienting veil. "The seer's domain," she whispers, her voice methodical yet laced with suspense, where visions fracture like the god's own certainties. These mists mirror our turmoil. It's unveiling what Olympus hides in psychological shadows. You press forward, the mist, coiling around your limbs like the Lithias's current renewed, its salt crystals beating on your skin with a cool, prickling texture, evoking the sensory creep of sacred spaces where truths emerge at the blood price of clarity. The antechamber expands into a circular sanctum, walls of translucent quartz that refract the mists into rainbows of illusion, the ceiling a dome of swirling vapors where faint constellations wheel unnaturally. Motifs of fate braiding the space, river crossings hinted in the mist's flow, sacred bargains etched in the quartz's veins like Athena's loom. Braziers ring the perimeter, their flames low and blue, feeding the salt incense that rises in spirals, filling the air with a hissing sigh, and the sonic textures of revelation, the crackle of crystals igniting echoes of distant oaths whispering through the haze, the subtle chime of unseen wind bells tolling like proverbs from stone. When stars shift, grief shifts with them. From the center's altar a low plinth of Mother of Uv, pearl-veined with lightning scars, emerges. The seer archetype of fractured prophecy in Greek mythology, her form veiled in gossamer that shifts like the mists, eyes wide and unfocused hands, extended as if weaving threads from the vapor itself. She is the Pythia reborn, her presence escalating Elara's trials by unveiling the god's inner conflicts. Mirroring the queen's turmoil and visions that demand emotional scars for their glimpse. Queen who endures guardians and bargains, the seer and owns, her voice a rasp amplified by the dome, calm yet building the epic cadence of unveiling. The mists part for you, revealing the pantheon's tensions fractures in divine marble. As your vow stirs the throne's foundations, Elara kneels before the altar. The mist parting at her approach to form a scrying pool of vapor, the amulet placed at its edge humming in harmony, drawing the incense into swirling patterns that birth the visions. You kneel beside her, the salt's brine stinging your eyes, the psychological intrigue coiling as the first fracture appears, Zeus enthroned in Olympus halls. His brow furrowed, not in thunderous rage, but doubt lightning staff gripped tightly as whispers of Hera's jealousy, echo tensions born from sacred bargains gone awry where his boons to mortals, like the Argonauts, demanded traded loyalties, scarring the king of gods with isolation amid his power. The vision mirrors Elara's inner storm, her scar from Athena, itching as if the goddess's traded knowledge bleeds into the mist, revealing how Zeus's unyielding laws mask a fear of mortal uprisings, much like her grief over Theron fuels defiance. Deeper into the mists the seer gestures, the vapors condensing into tableau of divine frailty. Poseidon raging in his cavern trident, quivering not from wrath but regret, over oaths broken with Odysseus, the blood price of his curses rebounding as waves that erode his own throne. A psychological tension that parallels Elara's river told the memory of Theron's steps numbed, yet propelling her forward. Hera appears next, her peacock-feathered crown askew in a chamber of golden mirrors. Eyes narrowed at Zeus's dalliances, her taboos enforcing silence on lovers like Io, but fracturing her own heart with scars of betrayed trust, echoing Elara's turmoil over the god's caprice that claimed her child. The incense thickens, salt crystals forming on the altar like frozen tears, the sonic textures intensifying, the mist's hiss sinking with the seer's breaths. Echoes of godly arguments overlapping like labyrinth lies the amulets, weaving through as a leitmotif of the relic's awakening. In the historical vein of Greek oracles, this sanctum recalls the Delphic Pythia's transinduced prophecies from the 8th century BCE, where vapors from a sacred chasm at Delphi unveiled geopolitical tensions for city-states like Athens and Sparta. A local legend from Phocis claiming such mists carried the gods' human frailties to mortals, blending divine omniscience with the costs of revelation madness. or exile for those who spoke too freely of the pantheon esrifs. The visions escalate, the seer chanting in rhythmic fragments, her hands parting the mist to reveal Apollo's lyre, strung taut in a sunlit grove. His fingers hesitating over strings that hum with unspoken fears of the oracle's prophecies turning against him, a mirror to Alara's doubt after the lineage's numbing trade resolves, scarred by glimpses of erased heroes, their challenges crushed by divine whim. Demeter wanders spectral fields in the haze, her grief over Persephone's descent fracturing into anger at Hades' bargain. The underworld guide's lament of hidden laughter resurfacing as a quirky detail in the vision, Persephone's crown. That anomalous artifact of asphodel and shadow doesn't merely echo emotions, but possesses a bizarre temperament in times of pantheon tension. It amplifies suppressed joys into hallucinatory blooms that bloom and wither in the mists, enforcing a taboo rule where the wearer's laughter, if overheard by siblings like Zeus, twists into curses that scar the listener's ears with ringing silence, a function like iron under breath. Escalating godly choices with consequential isolation, its texture blooming salt incense in the air. Mirroring Alara's inner conflict as the vision's blooms brush her skin, stirring a fleeting numbness in her chest. You feel the mists creep deep in, salt crystals crunching under your knees, the dome's quartz walls sweating vapor that drips like the chamber's earlier dew. The psychological tensions of the gods' doubts, regrets, jealousies unfolding in epic scope, callbacks to the Oathkeeper's chains and their self-imposed bindings, the trickster's deceptions and Apollo's hesitant notes, Athena's strategic calm cracking under Zeus's shadow. Alara absorbs it all, her face pale in the blue flames, the amulet vibrating as if channeling the fractures into her aura. Fortifying yet taxing her turmoil, the gods' human frailty is a balm and burden, revealing how their unyielding laws stem from fears akin to her sorrow, costs paid in traded silences and scars that echo across realms. A confessional interlude surfaces from the seer amid the chant, her voice intimate through the haze. What? I confess the burden of such sights. The pantheon's mirrors reflect our own breaks. Pilgrims paying emotional blood price for truths that heal and wound like the Delphic vapors that drove kings to wisdom or ruin. The visions swirl faster, the mists condensing into a final tableau. The Olympians in council. Tensions boiling as Ilar's vow ripples through, Zeus's thunder hand trembling. Hera's gaze sharpening their collective doubts, a prelude to the challenge. Mirroring her inner resolve fracturing under the weight of scars accumulated. The incense thins, the scrying pool evaporating with a final hiss, leaving the sanctum clearer, the seer retreating into vapor, her prophecy's weight settling like salt on your tongues. The epic through-line advancing Alara's turmoil aligned with the gods. The path to direct accusation one revelation closer, cohesion woven from the relic's hum and the river's persistent echo. But as the mists fully part and the quartz walls gleam with residual rainbows, the question that remains pulling you toward the deceptive torrent is whether these fractured visions of divine tensions will unite, Alara with the pantheon, as hidden allies or deepen her turmoil, exposing weaknesses that the river's nymph will exploit in the crossing ahead. The court sanctum's rainbows fade as you and Alara exit through a veiled archway. The hallucinatory mists thinning to reveal a descending path slick with dew, leading toward a roar that swells from below, the thunderous rush of water. Not the storm's echo, but a river's deceptive fury, spray misting the air with a fine veil that carries the exotic scent of lotus and papyrus, evoking distant realms traded into Greek lore through Mycenaean voyages. The path steepens roots of ancient cedars twisting across the stone like fate weavers. Threads the amulet's hum syncing with the growing tumult motifs of river crossings recurring. As the seer's fractured visions linger in your mind, the pantheon's tensions now a psychological undercurrent propelling you downward. Alara's silvery tattoos from the Guardian gleam faintly in the spray, her aura from Athena steadying her gait against the inclined slipperiness. The salt incenses residue on your skin mixing with the river's briny Thames, a sensory bridge from the sanctum's haze to this torrent's embrace. Another crossing, she says, her voice calm amid the rising din. Deceptive as the Nile's floods that inspired our seer's tales, waters that hide God's secrets in their depths. Demanding cunning to navigate, you descend together, the air humidifying, charged with the ozone of rapid currents, Star omens glimpsed through cloud breaks above wheeling, like omens of the trial's escalation. The path bottoms out at a ledge overlooking the river, deceptive torrent inspired by the Nile. Its legendary floods its waters churning. Milky turquoise over hidden rocks foaming white where it crashes against obsidian boulders that jut like the spines of submerged leviathans, the flow swift and serpentine carving a gorge that echoes the myths of Greek. Traders who bartered with Egyptian priests in the Bronze Age, bringing tales of river deities that mirrored their own Poseidon and nymphs. A historical fusion in the linear B records from Knossos, where such voyages etched legends of deceptive currents guarding sacred knowledge. Local lore from Cretan shores warning that Nile-like torrents in the Peloponnese tested heroes with illusions of calm before the flood's blood price. The river spans wide, no skiff in sight, its surface rippling with false eddies that lure the eye, the sonic textures overwhelming. The relentless roar drowning thought. Spray hissing against stone like whispered taboos, the deeper undertows gurgle hinting at underwater labyrinths where sacred bargains dissolve. Lara scans the bank, the amulet vibrating urgently, its awakened energy revealing faint glimmers in the water clues to divine weaknesses, perhaps hidden by the torrent's deception. From an eddy near the ledge emerges the trickster nymph, archetype of capricious allure in this pantheon. Her form rising half from the foam like a lotus bloom personified, skin shimmering iridescent as fish scales. Hair cascading in wet tendrils of turquoise that blend with the river, eyes gleaming with mischievous light that shifts from emerald to storm gray. She is a naiad kin to the Nile's Hopi, blended into Greek waters through mythic trade. Her presence escalating the crossing with deceptions that tease the gods' frailties. The unyielding laws of Olympus veiled in her playful currents, wayfarers. Defying thrones she trills, her voice bubbling over the roar like wind chimes in a gale. Light yet laced with suspense, this torrent yields to none but the clever. I am Nerida, guardian of deceptive flows cross if you dare. But first, solve my riddle or be swept to the Lethe's kin. Ilara approaches the water's edge, the spray beating on her chitin like jewels. You at her side, feeling the ledge tremble with the river's pulse. The psychological intrigue coiling as the nymph's temperament reveals itself bizarre and mercurial. One moment giggling like Persephone's hidden laughter, the next hissing with serpentine ire. A quirk tied to her watery domain. This trickster's essence drawn from Nile-inspired artifacts like enchanted scarabs, traded to Delphi possesses an anomalous function where her mood doesn't merely shift, but manifests as physical changes in the river calm when amused, revealing submerged clues in crystal-clear pools but furious when slighted, churning illusions of drowning depths that hide the very weaknesses she guards. A rule enforcing her taboo by binding the crosser's fate to her whims. Escalating choices with consequential floods or revelations, her texture like damp cedar slick with foam, turning aid into a gamble of divine secrets. The nymph splashes playfully, the river momentarily stilling to form a glassy mirror that reflects the star omens above. Her bizarre temperament blooming a serene pool at her feet. Riddle me this, Queen of Scars. What weakens the thunderer when stars align in eclipse? Not bolt, but doubt's quiet strike. Ilara ponders, the amulet humming in response. Athena's boon whispering strategic hints from the seer's visions, the pantheon's tensions. Zeus's trembling hand while the spray cools your face, the roar softening to a murmur in the deceptive calm. A mortal's vow unbroken, Ilara replies, her tone methodical. Echoing oaths he cannot shatter without fracturing his realm. The nymph laughs, a sound like temple bells lightened by bubbles, the pool clearing to reveal submerged clues, ethereal etchings in the riverbed glowing runes depicting Zeus's taboos. His thunder vulnerable to sacred bargains that demand traded loyalties from his kin, like Hera's jealousy or Poseidon's regrets. Weaknesses hidden in the current's flow, the nymph's quirk amplifying them into visible threads that snake toward the far bank, a path of stiller water amid the torrent. Emboldened, you wade in together, the water shockingly cold at first. Lapping at your knees with a deceptive gentleness, the nymph pulling alongside on a reed raft that materializes from foam. Her temperament shifting whimsically giggling to reveal a rune of Apollo's lyre dissonance, hissing to churn a false whirlpool that tests Ilara's dodge. The clues unfolding, divine weaknesses like Demeter's grief-fractured resolve, exploitable in eclipses when star omens align to echo mortal defiance. The current strengthens midway, foam rising to your waist, the roar returning as the nymph's ire flares at a misstep, Alara's foot slipping on a hidden rock, the river churning illusions of drowning shadows, psychological barbs mirroring the seer's tensions. The blood price manifesting as a surge that numbs your limbs like the relic's earlier trade. Alara steadies, pressing the amulet to the water. Its anomalous energy ripples outward, absorbing the deception and calming the flow. The quirky detail of the nymph's scarabescence interacting with the relic, causing her temperament to stabilize briefly, the river parting to expose a final clue. A submerged tablet of clay etched with a proverb, "Oaths live in the cut," revealing Zeus's core frailty, a taboo against direct mortal confrontation, lest his thunder rebound as self-doubt, a secret the nymph guards with her mercurial moods. The nymph's laughter returns as you reach the far bank, the torrent receding to a babble, her form dissolving into spray with a final trill, crossed by wit. But weaknesses whisper use them wisely, or the flood claims all. Alara climbs out, water streaming from her chiton, clues revelations etching into her mind like Athena's map. The amulet cooling as the crossing completes. The epic scope, advancing the deceptive, Nile-inspired waters navigated. Divine frailties unveiled in glimpses, callbacks to the vision's fractures and the lineage's erased heroes weaving cohesion, the psychological tension of the nymph's temperament, a mirror to the god's own shifts. A confessional interlude surfaces from Alara on the bank, her voice intimate over the fading roar, in this deceptive flow. I confess the thrill of glimpsed secrets like rivers yielding buried truths. At the nymphs, whims scar the soul with what-ifs, pilgrims bargaining with water's caprice for the deities' hidden cuts. The far ledge rises toward eclipse-shadowed heights, the clue's weight propelling forward, motifs of sacred bargains and star omens aligning tighter. But as the river's spray dries and the nymph's echoes fade into the gorge, the question that remains, drawing you toward the sun's swallowing shadow, is whether these clues to divine weaknesses will empower Alara's accusation or tempt the gods' collective taboo. Unraveling the pantheon's fragile eclipse and truths too sharp to wield. The far ledge from the torrent climbs sharply, path of weathered granite steps that wind upward through a narrowing gorge. The river's roar fading to a distant murmur behind you, placed by the hush of gathering clouds that blot the midday sun, casting the ascent in deepening twilight. Alara pauses midway, her wet chiton clinging like a second skin. The amulet's hum rising in pitch as the air cools with an unnatural swiftness. Scented with the metallic edge of impending celestial drama, ozone laced with the faint floral whisper of night-blooming jasmine that clings to the gorge's crevices, evoking sacred gardens where prophecies unfold. The clues from the nymph's deceptive flow etch deeper into her thoughts. Divine weaknesses, like Zeus's taboo against direct confrontation, shimmering in her mind's eye, intertwined with Athena's strategic aura. The psychological tension of the pantheon's fractures coiling tighter as star omens emerge prematurely in the dimming sky, wheeling in erratic patterns that foreshadow the eclipse's grip. The shadow falls now, she says, her voice steady in the epic cadence. A celestial veil where bargains turn shadowed, testing the clues we've gleaned against the gods' veiled resolve. The sun's swallowing will demand our final weave before the throne. You ascend beside her, the steps slick with residual spray, each footfall echoing like a heartbeat in the gorge's confines. Motifs of fate recurring, the river's deceptive currents echoed in the clouds. Deceptive calm, sacred bargains poised on the eclipse's edge, the relic's vibrations syncing with the subtle shift of light. The path crests at a flattened plateau, ringed by jagged spires of rock that form a natural amphitheater. The center dominated by a circular altar of polished heliotrope bloodstone, sacred to solar rites. Its deep green surface flecked with red inclusions that seem to pulse as the eclipse begins, the sun's corona nibbling at its own light in a slow, inexorable bite. This shadowed arena, woven into Greek mythology's celestial lore, recalls the historical eclipse of 585 BCE observed by Thales of Miletus, who predicted the darkening to halt a battle between the Lydians and Medes, a local legend from Ionia, where such omens were seen as divine interventions in mortal conflicts, blending astronomical wonder with the gods' unyielding signals of tension. Where priestesses at Ephesus invoked Apollo to interpret the shadow's bargains, exacting blood price in vows of peace or escalation. The air stills completely now, the gorgeous winds dying to whispers, sonic textures unfolding in the hush, the altar's faint hum like the amulet's kin. The distant rivers gurgle transposed to a celestial drip of shadow across stone. The first bird's cries silenced as if the world holds breath, incense trails from hidden braziers igniting spontaneously with a soft pop, filling the plateau with myrrh's thick resinous veil that curls toward the darkening sky. Ilara approaches the altar, placing the amulet at its heart where the bloodstone cradles it perfectly. The relic spirals aligning with the stone's flex, igniting a subtle glow that pierces the growing dusk. The eclipse deepens, the sun reduced to a crescent sliver, casting the spires in elongated shadows that converge on the altar like converging fates. Star omens blooming vividly in the premature night constellations of the Titanomachy, wheeling unnaturally, omens of the gods stirring tensions. In this shadow, Ilara intones, her tone methodical, yet building suspense. We bargain with the veiled divine, offering the clues as currency for passage to the throne. The nymph's revelations, Zeus's doubt, Hera's scars will weave the pact. But the eclipse demands a price in fractured light. You stand at the altar's edge, the myrrh smoke coiling around you like the seer's mists renewed. The psychological intrigue peaking as shadowy figures flicker at the plateau's rim, ethereal echoes of the pantheon. Not fully manifest but watching. Their forms hinting at the fractures unveiled, Zeus's silhouette trembling, Poseidon's trident dipping in hesitation. The collective taboo against Ilara's ascent manifesting as hesitant presences that test the bargain's weave. The shadowed negotiation begins as Ilara raises her arms, the amulet channeling energy into the bloodstone which flares with inner light, projecting tendrils of shadow that form a veil between you and the flickering figures, a sacred bargain in eclipse-esque grip, where the gods' weaknesses become the threads of exchange. Thunderer and kin, she calls, her voice resonating through the hush. Witness the mortal who crosses deceptions and guardians. Offer the clues gleaned from your realms or doubts, quiet strike. Loyalties traded in jealousy, to spare the blood price of direct clash. In return, grant passage unhindered, or let the shadow consume your throne's illusions. The figures stir Hera's peacock eyes narrowing in the gloom, Apollo's lyre humming dissonantly from the ether, the psychological tensions surfacing. As the eclipse peaks the sun, a black disk ringed in fire the plateau, lunged into starlit midnight. The altars glow the sole anchor. The bargain escalates, shadows coiling tighter. Zeus's echo booms faintly, demanding proof of the clues, forcing Ilara to recite the nymph's runes taboos against confrontation, rebounding as self-doubt. Persephone's crown amplifying hidden fractures, each word a weave that binds the divine, yet exacts a cost, the bloodstone heating under her palms. Searing a new scar that mirrors the guardian's tattoos, a line of red flecks blooming like the stone's inclusions, traded resolve for the pact's hold. The amulet's quirky detail unveils in the eclipse's taboo embrace, this cursed relic. Once bathed in a historical solar darkening during the Gigantomachy, possesses a bizarre anomalous function amid celestial shadows. It doesn't merely channel energy, but inverts the eclipse's light, creating a pocket of reversed time within the veil, where echoes of past godly bargains replay in miniature, enforcing a rule that the bargainer must relive a divine fracture as their own. A sensory trade where the relic spirals etch the experience as a temporary vision ache, escalating the negotiation with psychological immersion, its texture like salt incense burning inward, turning the gods' weaknesses into the mortal's fleeting burdens, Lara glimpsing Zeus's isolation in a flash. A scar of loneliness numbing her heart briefly, mirroring the river's memory toll. The figures waver, the bargain tipping, as the clues wait. Hera's jealousy is leverage. Demeter's grief, as a like, compels a reluctant yielding, shadows parting slightly. A quarter of starlit mist forming beyond the altar, passage granted yet laced with warning. The pantheon's tensions fracturing further under the mortal's weave, motifs braiding the moment, river deceptions echoed in the veil's flow. Oath-keepers' chains in the shadows' coils, lineage visions resurfacing in the reversed echoes. The corona flares at the eclipse's edge, light creeping back as the sun reclaims its arc, the plateau brightening in waves that scatter the myrrh smoke like fleeing omens. the figures dissolving into ether with a final resonant sigh. The bargain sealed, but the scar on Alara's palms throbbing with the gods. Supposed doubt a blood price of internalized frailty that steals yet tests her. You retrieve the amulet, its warmth fading, the epic scope advancing, the shadowed pact a bridge to the throne, cohesion from the seer's revelations and the nymph's clues weaving the narrative. Tighter the psychological tension of divine mirrors, now her own propelling toward accusation. A confessional interlude emerges from Alara as the light returns. Her voice intimate against the fading hush in this inverted shadow. I confess the echo of their doubts weighing like traded scars anew. A pilgrim's glimpse into godly isolation, yet the bargains weave empowers, cutting through illusions for the confrontation's dawn. The corridor of mist beckons, star omens steadying overhead, the thunder a distant approval or threat, the path to Olympus unveiled, yet fraught. But as the eclipse wanes and the bloodstone cools, its flecks dimming like spent omens, the question that remains, drawing you into the mist's corridor, is whether this shadowed bargain has truly secured passage or invited the gods' fractured wrath to pursue. Unraveling Alara's scars in the throne room's unforgiving light, the mist corridor from the eclipse plateau unfolds like a veil drawn aside by unseen hands, its ethereal walls shimmering with the residue of shadowed bargains, guiding you and Alara through a transition that blurs the line between mortal ascent and divine threshold. The air warming gradually from the gorged-esque chill to a balmy radiance scented with ambrosia and polished gold, as if the very essence of Olympus seeps through the haze. The amulet rests heavy in Alara's palm, its hum now a steady thrum that vibrates through her bones, syncing with the faint, harmonious chime of distant lyres and the subtle rustle of silken robes. Motifs of fate converging in this final approach. The river-esque deceptive flows echoed in the mist-esque lingering swirls. Sacred bargains solidified in the corridor's unyielding path. The seer-esque fractured visions resolving into a palpable tension that presses against your chest, like the weight of unspoken accusations. Alara's scar silvery from the guardian red flecked, from the bloodstone pulse faintly under. Athena's aura, the psychological intrigue of the gods. Internalized doubts now her own, a mirror that steels her resolve even as it whispers of the costs yet to unfold the star omens. From the eclipse fading into a perpetual twilight that hints at the throne room's eternal light. The heart awaits, she murmurs, her voice a calm thread in the building crescendo, where vows shatter thrones, and the forbidden name becomes the blade. Every trial has woven us here. Scars as our armor against their unyielding gaze. You walk in step. The mist parting to reveal glimpses of marble halls beyond columns of ivory and electrum twisting skyward. The air humming with the low vibration of divine power, each revelation a step closer to the pantheon's core. The corridor dissolves into a grand atrium, its floor a mosaic of lapis and pearl depicting the cosmos and flux stars shifting as in the eclipse, rivers coiling like the nymph's torrent, labyrinths unraveling under heroic threads. The ceiling an open vault where clouds drift lazily, filtering sunlight that bathes the space in a golden haze. The sonic textures enveloping, the soft pad of your sandals on pearl, the harmonious undertone of eternal springs bubbling from hidden fountains. The distant murmur of godly discourse, like wind through olive groves, all underscoring the epic culmination. This throne room antechamber, the sanctum's prelude in Greek mythology, evokes the historical apotheosis of Heracles on Olympus, as described in the 6th century BCE epics of Pindar. A local legend from Thebes where the hero ascended after trials confronting the deities in a council that tested mortal divinity against their taboos, blending heroic elevation with the UHL. Blood price of integrations, cars of labors traded for seats among immortals. A rite where accusations against Zeus's caprice were silenced or woven into the pantheon's fabric. Alara halts at the atrium's far archway, the amulet flaring as if sensing the throne beyond, its light casting her shadow long and resolute. The psychological tension peaking in the hush before the storm, the gods' frailties from the visions. Their doubts and jealousies, now ammunition for the confrontation that will utter the forbidden name. Beyond the arch lies the throne room proper, a vast hall of unending splendor, where 12 seats of gold and ivory encircle, a central dais, the air thick with the scent of nectar and blooming laurel braziers of eternal flame, casting flickering warmth that dances across murals of cosmic battles. The Titanomachi reborn in vivid frescoes, gods in eternal vigilance. Zeus presides on the highest throne, his form colossal yet weary, lightning staff in hand, crackling faintly, eyes storm-gray and piercing. Hera at his side, crown askew with veiled ire. The others arrayed Athena watchful, Poseidon brooding. Apollo's lyre silent, their presences a collective archetype of divine authority fractured by the seer's revelations. The unyielding laws manifesting as hesitant gazes that betray the taboo of this mortal intrusion. The hall's sonic textures swell, the throne's low rumble like thunder held in check. The flames crackle syncing with the amulet's thrum, the god's breaths a chorus of restrained power, iron on iron from Zeus's grip tightening. Lara steps forward, you at her flank, the mosaic shifting underfoot as if alive. The psychological intrigue exploding into confrontation, the pantheon's tensions mirroring her scars. The clues from the nymph visions now the weave of accusation. Thunderer of Olympus, Alara declares, her voice rising clear and methodical. Echoing through the hall like a hymn fragment carved in stone, I, Alara of Mycenae, cross rivers of deception and guardians of fury to stand before your thrones. The forbidden name Zeus, Lord of Oaths, you shatter at whim rings from my lips, challenging the costs you impose. Theron's life traded for silence, heroes erased for your caprice, sacred bargains that scar. Mortals, while your frailties hide in doubt and jealousy, the gods stir Zeus's staff, flaring with lightning that arcs harmlessly overhead. Hera's eyes narrowing to slits, the air ionizing with the weight of taboo utterance. The name spoken, a blade piercing, the veil motifs braiding the climax. The relic's hum amplifying to a resonant chime, star omens from the vault above, aligning in eclipse echo. The river's toll resurfacing and the hall's fountains bubbling defiantly. The confrontation erupts in waves of divine retort, Poseidon's trident slamming the floor, sending ripples through the mosaic. LOS lyre strumming dissonant notes that twist the air, but Athena's subtle nod from her seat bolsters Alara. The boon's strategic insight revealing paths in the chaos. The psychological tension of godly fractures exploding, Zeus's doubt manifesting as a tremor in his voice. Mortal, your vow assaults the order we forged oaths, bind all, yet you unravel them with whispers of our shadows. Alara presses the amulet, channeling the lineage's visions into a spectral glow around her, projecting erased heroes' forms that circle the throne's warrior queens and Argonaut kin, her silenced accusations echoing the forbidden name. The relic's quirky detail unveiling in the heart of Olympus. This cursed artifact, once a splinter from Zeus's own aegis, shattered in primordial strife, possesses a bizarre anomalous function amid divine councils. It doesn't merely project but harmonizes with the pantheon's collective hum, inverting their unyielding laws into momentary vulnerabilities, enforcing a taboo rule where the utterance of the forbidden name triggers a cascade of echoed frailties, each god reliving a scar in vision form Zeus, glimpsing his isolation. Hera, her betrayal's a sensory trade that numbs the hall's power, escalating the challenge with psychological reciprocity, its texture like salt incense mingling with thunder's afterscent, turning accusation into a mirror that forces the deities to confront their own blood prices, traded silences and doubts laid bare. The hall trembles, thrones creaking as the gods' forms flicker, Hades' shadow rising from a fissure. Persephone's crown blooming illusory flowers that whisper hidden laughter. Demeter's grief manifesting as wilting laurel, the confrontation's epic scope unfolding, the unyielding laws fracturing under the mortals weave callbacks to the oracle's prophecy and the eclipse's bargain, igniting the air with cohesion. Rivers crossed in the fountains, surge labyrinths unraveled in the mural's shifting scenes, sacred bargains renegotiated in the gods' hesitant retreat. Zeus rises, staff lowered, his voice booming yet cracked. Your name's echo shakes us. Queen, the costs you bear mirror our own, oaths that cut deepest in silence. Speak your demand and let the pantheon weigh it. Alara stands unbowed, scars aglow, the amulet's inversion holding the cascade. The psychological triumph laced with cost, a fresh numbness in her core from the relic's trade. Divine frailties, now shared burdens that heal and wound. A confessional interlude surfaces from Alara amid the flickering visions. Her tone intimate against the hall's rumble. In uttering the forbidden, I confess the terror of their mirrors turning inward. like rivers reflecting stars in turmoil. Yet this shared fracture reassures pilgrims and gods alike, scarred by the same weave. Defiance, a balm that softens the eternal cut. The gods settle, the cascade fading, throne room steadying in a hush of reluctant accord, the epic through-line cresting the accusation leveled. The pantheon's tensions yielding to negotiation, the path from defiance to potential resolution, one echo closer. But as the amulet's glow dims and the visions dissipate into the golden haze, the question that remains, lingering in the hall's resonant silence, is whether Zeus's weighing will grant Ilara's demand for restored lives and unbroken oaths, or demand one final blood price, to unraveling the confrontation into a new sacred bargain that binds mortal and divine in fading light. The throne room's hush deepens after Zeus's words, the golden haze settling like a held breath across the hall, the murals of cosmic battles now. Frozen in mid-stride as if the god's eternal vigilance pauses to weigh the mortal's audacity. Lara stands at the dais' edge, the amulet's inversion still rippling. Faintly through the air, its anomalous cascade leaving echoes of divine frailties. Hera's peacock feathers ruffling with unbidden regret. Apollo's lyre vibrating with unresolved dissonance that linger like the salt incense from the eclipse altar, mingling with the nectar's sweetness. To create a heady, disorienting perfume, psychological tension, born from the seer's visions and the nymph's clues, hangs palpable, a web of shared scars binding accuser and accused, the unyielding laws of Olympus fracturing not in cataclysm, but in the subtle shift of godly postures. Poseidon is trident lowering, Athena's gaze steady with approval, Demeter's hands unclenching from her lap. God, you remain at Ilara's side, the mosaic underfoot humming with the relic's thrum, its patterns swirling like the river's deceptive eddies, renewed. Motifs of fate converging in this pivotal negotiation, sacred bargains at their zenith. Labyrinths unraveled in the hall's twisting columns. Star omens from the vault above steadying into harmonious alignment. The forbidden name's utterance a catalyst that demands resolution or retribution. Ilara meets Zeus's storm-gray eyes, her voice emerging calm and resolute. Methodical in the epic cadence that has carried her through trials, each word a thread weaving the demand into the pantheon's loom. Lord of Thunder, weaver of oaths that bind and break, I demand restoration. Return Theron to the living unscarred by your caprice. End the blood prices on mortal straitened memories, silenced heroes, frailties imposed as divine whim. Let sacred bargains flow equal, where gods and pilgrims share the cuts. As the erased lineages and your own fractures reveal, no more silence for the forgotten, no more thrones built on grief's shift. The hall resonates with her proclamation, the fountains bubbling higher in response, their waters reflecting the gods' stirring forms. The sonic textures amplifying, the low rumble from Zeus's throne like iron on iron softening to a contemplative hum. The lyre's strings plucking a single, clear note of acknowledgement. The collective breaths of the pantheon, a chorus that underscores the weight of her ask. Psychological intrigue blooming as the inversion forces each deity to confront the mirror, Zeus glimpsing his isolation in Ilara's widowed sorrow. Hera her jealous scars in the queen's unyielding stand. Zeus leans forward on his throne, the lightning staff dimming to a soft glow, its colossal form casting a shadow that engulfs the dais without menace. The air crackling faintly with restrained power as he deliberates. The other gods murmuring in sidelong exchanges, Hades nodding from his shadowed seat. Persephone's crown blooming a single illusory flower that whispers hidden laughter, a quirky reminder of the underworld's lament. The negotiation unfolds in waves of divine discourse, Hera rising first, her voice sharp yet laced with the vulnerability the cascade unearthed. Mortal, your name's echo stirs what we have long veiled. But restoration demands balance. Theron's return would unravel threads spun by fate weavers, inviting chaos to our realms. Athena interjects, her aegis gleaming. The boon's strategic echo and Ilara's aura amplifying her support, yet the clues she bears our doubts, our traded silences, prove the laws uneven. Grant the demand, Father, or the fractures widen, as the oracle's prophecy foretold. The hall trembles subtly, the murals shifting as if alive, motifs braiding tighter, river crossings symbolized in the fountain's surge. The guardian's fury echoed in Zeus's flickering staff, the eclipse's shadow lingering in the vault's dimmed light, cohesion from the lineage's visions propelling the debate toward compromise. The amulet pulses hotter in Alira's grasp, its quirky anomalous function deepening the inversion amid this council. The relic splintered from Zeus's aegis doesn't merely harmonize but now draws a final trade from the Pantheon, collective vision, where each god relives a pivotal scar. Enforcing the taboo of the forbidden name by extracting a sliver of their essence into the obsidian, a sensory exchange that manifests as a shared glow across the thrones. Escalating the negotiation with mutual vulnerability, its texture like damp cedar infused with ambrosia, turning accusation into empathy's blade. The spirals etching faint lines on the relica surface that mirror the gods' own hidden mark. Zeus's isolation, as a thunder crack in his brow, hears jealousy as a peacock's tear. Poseidon yields next, his trident dipping. The seas have claimed too many for our whims. Let the boy return, but bind the bargain with a mortal oath. No further challenges to our core. Demeter adds her voice, grief softening to resolve, and end the silences on the forgotten. For Persephone's hidden joys teach that suppression scars all. The gods' essences flow into the amulet, the hall brightening with a collective radiance. The psychological triumph cresting Alira's demand, met in part. Theron's restoration woven from their concessions, the unyielding laws bending to a new equilibrium where blood prices are shared, sacred bargains democratized by the mortal's defiance. Zeus nods at last, rising to his full height, the staff extinguishing. Fully as he extends a hand palm, upturned in a gesture of reluctant accord. The air shimmering with the bargains seal a cascade of star-omen light raining from the vault bathing. Alara and warmth that heals her scars incrementally, the red flecks fading, the silvery tattoos, dissolving into faint memories. So be it, Queen of Mycenae, he intones, his voice booming yet tempered. Theron returns at dawn's light in your palace halls, unscarred and whole. The costs on mortals lighten, no more arbitrary trades, no erasures of heroic threads, but remember, oaths bind us all. Your name's utterance forges a pact eternal where defiance invites our gaze. A final blood price in vigilance. The hall erupts in a harmonious chime, the lyre playing a triumphant melody, fountains stilling to crystal pools. The epic scope resolving the confrontations blaze tempered into alliance. The Pantheon's fractures, mended by shared revelation. Callbacks to the oracle S-words and the river S-toll weaving the narrative to closure. Labyrinths navigated. Eclipses endured. Sacred bargains fulfilled in balance. Lara lowers her arms, the amulet cooling as the essences settle within. A new weight of guardianship in its spirals. The psychological release washing over her like the Lethes, gentle current grief shifting with the stars as promised. You witness the gods' forms softening. Athena's nod, a silent farewell. Persephone's flower wilting into a smile, the throne room's haze lifting to reveal paths downward, the descent to Mycenae shimmering in the distance. A confessional interlude emerges from Alara as the light fades, her voice intimate in the hall's settling hush. In sealing this pact, I confess the bittersweet victory like rivers yielding to the sea, washing away old scars, yet carving new channels of responsibility. Pilgrims return home with God's eyes upon the horizon. The gods disperse to their seats, the mosaic steadying underfoot. The epic journey complete, defiance rewarded, Olympus changed in subtle weave. The forbidden name a legend etched in divine memory. But as the throne room's radiance dims, and the path home beckons through the vault's opening, question that remains, echoing softly in the amulet's final hum, is whether this balanced bargain will hold against future caprices or summon new trials. Where Alara's vigilance becomes the Pantheon's unspoken oath in the mortal world's unfolding dawn. You walk the final path together, the citadel's walls welcoming with their weathered embrace. Ancient stones that have stood sentinel through countless sunrises, now bathed in the gentle light that promises renewal without haste or demand. The olive groves stir softly in the early breeze, their leaves whispering assurances of peace restored, carrying the faint, comforting aroma of earth awakening from night's quiet vigil, a scent that soothes the lingering echoes of distant thunders and shadowed crossings. Alara's steps slow here, deliberate and unhurried, each one a measured release from the weight of journeys undertaken. Her chiton drying in the warmth, the fabric settling like a familiar cloak around shoulders no longer bowed by unseen chains. The amulet rests against her chest, its once fierce hum faded to a subtle warmth. like the steady pulse of a hearthfire in a home long yearned for. Guarding the pack's fragile balance without the sharp edge of warning or trial, as the palace gates come into view, their bronze hinges gleaming softly in the dawn, a figure emerges from the archway, a small boy no more than 7 summers. His eyes wide with the innocent wonder of one who has known only the soft veil of dreams, his tunic simple and unmarred hair, tousled by the morning wind, that carries hints of sea salt and blooming thyme from the valleys below. Theron pauses at the threshold, rubbing sleep from his eyes as if roused from a peaceful slumber rather than the gods' capricious grasp, his small hand reaching out tentatively then, with growing certainty, toward the queen who has woven worlds to bring him back.
Lara
Kneels slowly, her movements fluid and tender, drawing him into an embrace that envelops without urgency, the reunion unfolding like the gradual unfurling of a lotus under first light, her voice a murmur soft as the rustle of silken threads, reassuring him with words that linger in the air like a lullaby's echo. My little one. The stars have shifted gently for us, grief giving way to this quiet morning, where no shadows linger to steal your steps or dim your laughter. The boy's arms wrap around her neck, his warmth a balm that eases the last faint throbs of scars, the moment stretching in serene expansiveness. Free from the rush of prophecies or the clamor of divine halls, simply the steady rhythm of breath shared between mother and child, hearts aligning in the calming certainty of return. You stand a respectful distance away, the scene folding into the broader tapestry of Mycenae. As awakening, the guards stirring at their posts with yawns and quiet exchanges, the first rays touching the palace fountains where water flows clear and untroubled, reflecting the sky's peaceful blue, without the ripple of hidden depths or deceptive currents. The psychological threads of the Odyssey soften here. The Pantheon's distant gaze is now a faint, watchful presence rather than a storm on the horizon, their frailties acknowledged and balanced in the new weave of oaths that promise equity over erasure, vigilance shared rather than imposed. Ilara rises with Theron at her side, his hand clasped in hers, small fingers trusting and sure, and together they turn toward the palace interior. The archway framing a world of hearths aglow, and chambers filled with the gentle hum of daily life, resuming servants preparing bread scented with honey and herbs, tapestries catching the light to reveal scenes of heroes not forgotten but honored in their quiet triumphs. The amulet catches a final glint of sun, its spirals seeming to settle into repose, a relic no longer cursed but cherished, holding the essences of gods and mortals in harmonious quietude, ensuring that future bargains flow with fairness, scars fading into stories told by firelight rather than born in solitude. In this tranquil close, the epic's cadence slows to a whisper, the imagery of rivers and eclipses and labyrinthine paths dissolving into the simple beauty of dawn's embrace, reassuring that defiance, when woven with wisdom, yields not endless trials, but moments of profound enduring peace. The palace doors part softly, inviting Ilara and Theron within, the world beyond the gates continuing its gentle turn. Grief shifted fully with the stars, leaving only the calming assurance that some vows, once spoken, heal as deeply as they challenge.